Chapter 163. Qiao Weimin's legs were trembling. After being kicked by Jing Yunjiao, he rolled to the side like a ball. His eyes flashed with anger, but he immediately restrained himself and didn't dare to move. He couldn't believe that there was such a man in this world who didn't follow the rules. That man tied him to the car and beat him up without any explanation. The punches on his body were more painful than knives. It was as if there was a 1,000-pound rock pressing down on him. He couldn't breathe. He shouted and screamed in the car, thinking that the man would be worried about his life, but who knew that the man didn't care at all. The other person beside him even laughed and said that even if he really killed him, no one would stand up for him. He could clearly feel the man's murderous intent. At that moment, he felt as if he was in a Jura hell. Waves of cold air came out, and that kind of oppression left him with only nervousness and fear. Even now, his mind was still filled with the despair of being choked by that man. Qiao Weimin's cowardly look made Jing Yunjiao's heart feel refreshed. Yunjiao, when did you become so powerful? Xiao Haiqing looked at Jing Yunjiao with a different gaze. It was as if she wanted to worship him. Suchu's eyes were filled with red hearts. She couldn't wait to study Jing Yunjiao from head to toe. If you ask me, I think you're more handsome when you're in class. Did you see the expressions of the other students? It was too exciting. Oh right, Qi Daeyong even asked me later if my cousin knew how to beat people at home. Her legs were so nimble. Could it be that she was from the Shaolin Temple? It's funny just thinking about it. Qi Daeyong was their class monitor and teacher Qi's nephew. He was unbelievably obedient in front of teacher Qi. He was also a very honest and straightforward person. Although his grades were good, he was a fan of martial arts novels. He often talked about martial arts with a group of boys, but it was all just random gestures. In Suchu's eyes, compared to Jing Yunjiao's performance just now, it was all showy and impractical. You also learned martial arts from that mysterious old man? Xiao Haiqing asked with a face full of gossip. Jing Yunjiao nodded. Xiao Haiqing's eyes were shining. She looked at Jing Yunjiao as if she was the female lead in a movie. Gan Jinchen and Suchu didn't know about this mysterious old man. When they heard this, they were also interested and asked Jing Yunjiao to explain in detail. But thinking about the old man in her space, Jing Yunjiao's heart was moved. The old man kept saying that he was her ancestor, but until now, she still didn't know who her biological parents were. If her biological parents were dead, then there should have been other relatives, right? Why was she abandoned on the streets? If she met in the future, how should she treat them? Jing Yunjiao's mind was in a mess, but after a while, she couldn't help but laugh at herself. It was too early to think about these things now. Let nature take its course. Jing Yunjiao returned to the dormitory as usual. In the middle of the night, there was a pair of eyes staring at Jing Yunjiao's room with overflowing hatred. When Xiao Hongye thought about how she was forced by Cao Xing, her heart felt like it was being bitten by thousands of ants. She was in so much pain that she wished she was dead. And all of this was because of Jing Yunjiao. If she didn't cause Cao Xing to be arrested, she wouldn't have betrayed Cao Xing, and Cao Xing wouldn't hate her to the bone. There was also He Jiasi. That slut treated her like a maid and thought she was a princess. But in the end, wasn't she also humiliated by hooligans? What qualifications did she have to get close to Tang Zihua? Xiao Hongye was thinking about Tang Zihua when she saw a familiar figure walking towards Jing Yunjiao's unit. If this person wasn't Tang Zihua, who else could it be? Chapter 164. Tang Zihua was dressed in sportswear and looked like he was very familiar with this area. One look and you could tell that it wasn't his first time here. Xiao Hongye's eyes widened. She couldn't help but call out, Tang Zihua? Tang Zihua turned around in shock, only to see a pair of hazy eyes staring at him in the darkness. The girl was wearing a small pink skirt, her long hair draped over her shoulders. Her face was a little haggard, as if she had suffered some grievances. Why are you here? Tang Zihua asked, puzzled. He was somewhat on guard. It hadn't been long since he transferred schools, but now he knew that Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Hongye didn't get along. These two weren't biological sisters, so it was hard not to be afraid of Xiao Hongye appearing in this neighborhood. Nowadays, Most of the students in the school didn't like Qiao Hongye. He even heard others say that Qiao Hongye's private life was messy. Although these words were a little serious for a girl like Qiao Hongye, he didn't know why, but he always felt that Qiao Hongye made people uncomfortable. Qiao Hongye's heart was flustered for a moment, but she quickly regained her senses. She instantly became tear-stained. I am apologizing to sister on behalf of my father. Tang Zihua suddenly felt a little helpless. He suddenly understood why he didn't like this seemingly gentle Qiao Hongye. Too artificial. He had seen many girls like this. At the banquets held by the Tang family every year or at the banquets that they were invited to, there was no shortage of tear-stained girls. They obviously had healthy bodies, good looks, and were loved by their families, but they always looked like they had suffered a great grievance. It was as if they were telling the world how sad and pitiful her life was, as if everyone was bullying her. But what was the truth? They would always use this kind of attitude to gain sympathy and care from others. Therefore, compared to girls like this, he felt that those girls who were ostentatious were more natural. For example, Jing Yunjiao and that Xiao Haiqing by her side. Direct and straightforward. When speaking to them, there was no need to consider whether the other party's words had other meanings. Tang Zihua's gaze deepened. I don't think she needs your apology. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Qiao Hongye, secretly shook his head, and continued to walk upstairs. Qiao Hongye was unwilling to give up. She mustered up her courage and followed behind. When Su Chu opened the door, she also hurriedly stepped into the room. However, as soon as they entered, Qiao Hongye's heart flashed with a bit of jealousy. This house was very spacious, with 3 rooms and a living room. It was very clean, and there was a faint fragrance in the room. There were also all kinds of books placed in the room. How lucky was Jing Yunjiao? Not only did she have a good relationship with Tang Zihua, but she also managed to make friends with Su Chu and Gan Jinchen, 2 roommates with decent statuses. Jing Yunjiao's current life was what she had imagined. When Su Chu saw Qiao Hongye, she immediately screamed, "Qiao Hongye, what are you doing here? We don't welcome you here." Qiao Hongye lowered her head, the rims of her eyes reddening. She bit her lip and looked at Su Chu carefully. What did I do wrong to make you guys be so fierce to me? If Zihua can come, why can't I? Moreover, I really sincerely want to apologize to my sister. I won't steal her limelight in the future, and I won't make her unhappy again. Today's Qiao Hongye was 10,000 times more wronged than usual, especially after the physical and mental devastation she had just experienced. Her crying was extremely realistic, and her tears flowed down like a string. It simply stunned Su Chu. Gan Jinchen frowned and looked at Tang Zihua with a somewhat reproachful gaze. Tang Zihua was very innocent. Who knew that Qiao Hongye's skin would be so thick that she would actually break in with him? Chapter 165. Jing Yunjiao heard the commotion and came out of the space. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Qiao Hongye crying and complaining at the same time. Pursing his lips, Jing Yunjiao smiled faintly and walked to the sofa to sit down. He put an envelope on the coffee table and said faintly, "Since you're here, sit down." Qiao Hongye was stunned. She didn't expect Jing Yunjiao to be so easy to talk to this time. How could Qiao Hongye refuse? In order to show off in front of Tang Zihua, she immediately walked over. "Thank you. Although we don't have the same surname, you'll always be my sister in my heart. We grew up together for so many years, and I've always treated you as family." Family? Jing Yunjiao sneered and said, "Don't be in a hurry to claim kinship. Take a look at some things first." After saying that, Jing Yunjiao took out a photo. "This is a photo of you and Cao Xing preparing to steal from my room, right? This is a photo of you standing at the entrance of the alley to keep watch for Cao Xing." Jing Yunjiao continued to spread the photos on the coffee table and said, "This photo shows you following me. What about this one? You were complaining to your former friend outside the school? Let me think. At that time, you should be saying that everything was planned by me and that I'm wrongly accusing you, right?" When Jing Yunjiao took out these photos, Qiao Hongye panicked. However, Jing Yunjiao didn't give her a chance to speak. Instead, he took out the next few photos and said unhurriedly, as if he was chatting casually, "Those little tricks of yours aren't that big of a deal. However, These photos seem a little different. In the first photo, Chow Hongye was stealing something. It was a beautiful hairpin. After that, there was a scene of her secretly destroying clothes in a clothing store. Of course, the more one looked at it, the more shocking it was. Especially towards the end, there were many consecutive photos of Chow Hongye and Cao Xing. She didn't know what the two of them were talking about. They met for a long time and then went to a rented apartment together. After that, they came out at the same time and went their separate ways. Chow Hongye and He Jiasi went shopping. Then, in the surrounding scenes, He Jiasi was kidnapped by Cao Xing. Chow Hongye originally thought that there wouldn't be any photos of Cao Xing's rented apartment, but who knew that Jing Yunjiao would take out another stack of photos. He narrowed his eyes and said, "These are all things that are not suitable for children. Do you still want to see them?" Tossing it onto the table, the naked scene was displayed in front of them. He was completely stunned. The same scene had two female leads. One was He Jiasi, and the other was Chow Hongye. There were fewer photos of He Jiasi, but it was obvious that she had been raped by Cao Xing. The few of them understood immediately. No wonder He Jiasi would speak up for the kidnappers. She had obviously been threatened. "Why do you have these things?" Chow Hongye seemed to have gone crazy. She suddenly lost her previous obedience. How could she have known that Jing Yunjiao would suddenly be so polite to her because she had so many unsightly things in her hand? "Chow Hongye, you used to treat me like a fool and harmed me so many times behind my back, but I had no evidence and couldn't do anything to you. But people grow up. You have a good plan, and I have a ladder. What's so hard about finding someone to follow you just in case?" Jing Yunjiao said coldly. When Hua Zei's men found the rented apartment, they took advantage of Cao Xing's absence to install a small camera in the apartment. Jing Yunjiao originally didn't want to expose He Jiasi's matter, but He Jiasi just had to challenge her bottom line. After she hit Chow Weiman, a female classmate ran over and told her that Chow Weiman was found by He Jiasi. That female classmate happened to overhear He Jiasi's phone call in the bathroom and told her everything. He Jiasi asked Chow Weiman to educate her and Chow Hongye. In addition, she hoped that Chow Weiman would find a good man for her. It would be better for her to stay at home and take care of her husband and children. For the sake of money, Chow Weiman had no bottom line. If she and Li Xiaoyun hadn't beaten Chow Weiman up, she believed that Chow Weiman would have done everything he could to make her lose her chastity on the way home from school today. So much so that the scene from her previous life could have happened again. Chapter 166. He Jiasai provoked Chow Hongye and caused her to be bullied by Cao Xing, but her heart was twisted and she couldn't bear to see others live well. Originally, she thought that although this He family's eldest daughter was willful and mischievous, she was pitiful to be tormented like this. She wanted to let her off, but she insisted on making things difficult for her. Since that's the case, let's get rid of her in one fell swoop. Tang Zihua looked at the picture in shock, so shocked that he couldn't speak. He saw that Chow Hongye was no longer crying like before. Instead, she was somewhat deranged. "Jing Yunjiao, what do you want? Can't you just let me off? Why must you treat me like this?" "Let you off? Then who will let me off?" "Chow Hongye, ask yourself honestly, have I ever given you a chance? You spread rumors so many times. I spent my first semester isolated by everyone. Who pitied me? Now that I don't want to tolerate it anymore, you say I won't let you off. Your selfishness and shamelessness have reached the point where it makes one's hair stand on end." Jing Yunjiao's cold voice directly retorted, causing Chow Hongye's weak momentum to crumble. "I'm tired of dealing with your little tricks. Since you took the initiative to deliver yourself to me, then let's end it like this. I'll send these to the police later. But it's a pity, you're still underage," Jing Yunjiao said slowly. Chow Hongye's crime, logically speaking, should be taken in for education. However, Chow Hongye was smart and would definitely think of various ways to explain herself. Moreover, she was also one of the victims. In most cases, the guardian would be ordered to discipline her. With Chow Weiman's temper, he would probably expel Chow Hongye from school. What kind of life would Chow Hongye lead after she leaves school? Before she gets married, she would be like her previous life, imprisoned in the Chow family. Every day, she would do endless housework and work to earn money. The only difference was that Chao Hongye wouldn't be content with her lot. She would want to find a rich man to marry. Just like that year, when Chao Hongye let the adult Jiang Xia pursue her. Every step, she would follow the path of her previous life and return it to Chao Hongye bit by bit. Jing Yunzhao's clear eyes seemed to be emotionless at this time, which made Su Chu and the others panic. They didn't know what kind of life Jing Yunzhao had lived in the past, but they knew that it must have been very difficult. That was why she was so cold and unapproachable at such a young age. Chao Hongye really panicked this time. What should she do? If she could, she would kill Jing Yunzhao. But that was impossible. There were so many people around. What about the photos? If word got out, her life would be completely over. Rumors and facts were not the same thing. If it was just a rumor, she could defend herself and say that it was Jing Yunzhao who framed her. But if it was the truth, then she would become a street rat that everyone wanted to beat. She would not even have the chance to speak up for herself. Just like that, Jing Yunzhao quietly watched Chao Hongye's flustered, frightened, and at a loss for what to do. Her face remained calm. Sis, you can't hand it over to the police. If it falls into the police's hands, I will be beaten to death by my dad. Chao Hongye hurriedly begged. Dad told her to please Hijasi, but she secretly made a move against Hijasi. So she would be miserable. Dad would put all the blame for the factory's closure on her. Tang Zihua already didn't know what words to use to describe his current mood. He sat at the side in a daze, his mind in a mess. If the He family found out about this, Chao Hongye would not have a good ending. But the He family could easily find out who provided the evidence. At that time, Jing Yunzhao would have made an enemy for himself. Chapter 167. Jing Yunzhao's expression didn't change. Even after hearing Chao Hongye's pleas, she didn't show any signs of being moved. Even though her attitude might seem like she had a heart of stone in other people's eyes, Jing Yunzhao still couldn't help but want to suppress Chao Hongye's heart. Seeing her face covered in dirt and grime as she wailed in despair, she only felt joy in her heart. Jing Yunzhao hooked her lips. What does your death by Chao Weimin have to do with me? I only know that I can't let you live. Sister, how can you be like this? No matter what, we're still sisters who grew up together. Chao Hongye said unwillingly. My surname is Jing. Jing Yunzhao coldly said, declaring that she had no relationship with the Chao family. Such a resolute attitude made Chao Hongye's body and mind tremble. She lowered her head and looked at the scattered photos on the table, wishing she could burn them all. She had already begged Jing Yunzhao so humbly, but she still didn't care about her feelings. You've been like this since you were young, Jing Yunzhao, you still make me hate you. Chao Hongye's expression was sinister as she fiercely said this sentence. Her sudden sharp scream gave Su Chu a fright. She couldn't help but pat her chest. This Chao Hongye was too scary. She was usually gentle and pleasant, but who knew that when a cornered dog would jump over a wall, her expression would be so frightening. Chao Hongye pointed at Jing Yunzhao as if her eyes were spitting fire. She stood up with a whoosh. You bastard. Even your parents don't know whose wild plaything you are. Do you think you're very powerful? Let me tell you, Jing Yunzhao, even if I was a petty thief, even if I found someone to rape Hijasi, so what? I'm still nobler than you. You were picked up by my mother. You should be my slave for the rest of your life, to be beaten and scolded as you please. Do you think that suppressing me makes you happy? But you'll suffer retribution sooner or later. You want to climb up the Tang family with your lowly life. Hijasi can't do it, so don't even think about it. After tearing apart Chao Hongye's hypocritical skin, her threatening appearance was immediately displayed in front of everyone. Tang Zihua's expression was ugly because he, Jing Yunzhao, had been misunderstood more than once. He didn't expect that Chao Hongye would still think that there was something going on between him and Jing Yunzhao. Moreover, such words actually came from the mouth of a girl. Jing Yunzhao was an orphan whose parents were unknown, but he never felt that Jing Yunzhao was inferior to others. This Chao family, if they hadn't adopted Jing Yunzhao back then, they might have let Jing Yunzhao off. The air seemed to have solidified. Suchu had never encountered such a situation before and was momentarily at a loss for words. However, she was afraid that Jing Yunjiao would be upset because of this, so she revealed an angry expression and felt pity for Jing Yunjiao. Gan Jinchen was the same, but he believed that Jing Yunjiao was calm enough and had the ability to solve the problem. Actually, you're the one who wants to climb up the social ladder of the Tang clan, right? After a while, a mocking voice suddenly sounded in the silent room. Jing Yunjiao spoke again. Are you done scolding me? In my eyes, other than hooting a few words, you don't have any ability at all. Are you worthy of talking about nobility with me? I hate to be compared with animals the most. After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, he reached out and arranged the photos. Other than these photos, there was actually a set of videos and a few copies. Now, as long as she sent a text, Hua Zei's people would immediately hand these things over to the police. She took out her phone, typed a message, and sent it out after confirming it. Cooperate well with the request for exaggeration. After all, if you're taken in and educated, how am I supposed to play? Jing Yunjiao glanced at her and handed a stack of envelopes to her. As for these, they contain your first time in your life. I'll give them to you as a souvenir. Chapter 168. Jing Yunjiao looked down at her. Under Qiao Hongye's resentful gaze, he let Tang Zihua into her room to take his pulse and treat his illness. Qiao Hongye's heart-wrenching scream came from outside. Her voice was crazy, scaring all the children in the building. Suchu glared at her fiercely and threatened, I'm going to tell the police that you're here. The next second, Qiao Hongye ran away in a sorry state. She saw Jing Yunjiao's text, but she didn't know what Jing Yunjiao edited and didn't know who the text was sent to. So she wasn't sure if Jing Yunjiao had really called the police. So at this moment, she was scared and worried, but she didn't know what to do. Run away? She didn't have any money on her, and she was young. If she ran away from Huaning County, she might not be left with a bright future. Find Kaohsiung? Qiao Hongye shook her head again. She definitely couldn't. Kaohsiung would be alerted when the time came. Once both of them were caught, she wouldn't have the chance to defend herself anymore. After thinking about it, Qiao Hongye still decided to return to school, hoping that Jing Yunjiao was just scaring her. Qiao Hongye only returned to the dormitory at 10 o'clock in the morning. The girls in the dormitory naturally despised her to the extreme, but Qiao Hongye didn't care about what these people thought. She tossed and turned in bed. In the middle of the night, the girls in the dormitory were woken up by knocking on the door. The teachers cooperated with a group of police officers and took Qiao Hongye away in front of everyone's eyes. In order to fulfill their responsibilities, these teachers naturally asked about the situation. When they did, they were shocked to the extreme. In the morning, the whole school had already heard about it. As Qiao Hongye's homeroom teacher, Teacher Qi was very sullen. He had taught students for dozens of years, and no one had ever committed a crime during his tenure, let alone a girl who looked gentle and demure on the surface. Moreover, with Qiao Hongye's grades, she originally didn't have the qualifications to enter Class 1. She was completely pulled into Class 1 by the investor, the He family, for the sake of their daughter's playmate. At that time, he thought that this girl's grades were good, so he made an exception and accepted her. Who knew that she would ruin his many years of good reputation? Kaohsiung was also arrested along with Qiao Hongyi. When Kaohsiung re-entered the palace, as expected, Qiao Hongyi went back on her words. Qiao Hongyi claimed that she had been threatened by Kaohsiung from start to finish. She displayed her acting skills and wrongly accused Kaohsiung to the point that both man and God were indignant. This time, the crime was very serious. As the victim, he was, of course. Moreover, He Jiasi and Qiao Hongye were both minors, especially Qiao Hongye, who wasn't even 16 years old yet. Rape and extortion, Kaohsiung took a big tumble this time. By the time this case was completely settled, it was already more than a month later. As expected, Qiao Hongye voluntarily withdrew from school. At the entrance of the campus, the He family's car had been waiting for a long time. However, it was different from before. They had changed to an ordinary driver and the car was not as luxurious as before. After all, she was no longer qualified to marry into the Tang family. The He family felt uncomfortable and treated her differently. Xiao Hongye, you're really good. He Jiaxi looked at Xiao Hongye, who had also left the school, her eyes full of hatred. After these days of torture, Xiao Hongye was like a walking corpse. Her face and body were full of scars, all thanks to Xiao Weiman. Xiao Weiman's attitude was completely dependent on this Miss He. He Jiaxi, I admit that I've let you down. But do you think I sent those photos to the police? I'm not so stupid as to dig a hole for myself. It's all Jing Yunjiao's doing. How pitiful. Forget about me, but you, the daughter of a big family, actually couldn't beat a bastard and rushed back to Ning City like a stray dog. How pitiful. Xiao Hongye said coldly, too lazy to put on airs. Chapter 169. Xiao Hongye's eyes were full of sarcasm, not restraining herself at all. In the past, she had to lower herself to He Jiaxi because of her father. But now, for money, her father didn't even want her anymore, scolding and beating her up. Since she suffered such a big grievance, then why should she give in to He Jiaxi? Apart from her family background being better than her, what else could He Jiaxi compare to her? He Jiaxi's heart was currently filled with hatred. She had suffered a loss and caused such a thing to happen, causing the He family's 10 years of planning to go up in smoke. Naturally, the He family had investigated a bit, but the result they received wasn't Jing Yunjiao, but a hoodlum. However, with Xiao Hongye's explanation, she understood everything clearly. Jing Yunjiao must have bribed that hoodlum to do it on her behalf, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, destroying 2 people. This Jing Yunjiao pretended to be virtuous, keeping a distance from Tang Zihua on the surface, but behind his back, he was actually so sinister. However, she wouldn't let Jing Yunjiao off, but she also wouldn't let Xiao Hongye off. In the end, if Xiao Hongye didn't sell her out, she wouldn't have been defiled by a hoodlum. Now that this matter had spread like wildfire in Hua Ning County schools, when she returned to Ning City, there would definitely be people investigating what she did in Hua Ning County. At that time, even if she had 10 mouths, she wouldn't be able to explain herself. No matter what, she couldn't stay in Ning City anymore. After she returned, she could only go abroad for a period of time and wait for the matter to die down before returning. As for Tang Zihua, He Jiaxi clenched her teeth. If she couldn't have him, then Jing Yunjiao shouldn't think about it either. Even if she left, she still had ways to deal with the 2 of them. He Jiaxi got into the car with hatred. The car sped off, quickly leaving Hua Ning County's boundary. Xiao Hongye returned to Ning Town, but this matter had been stirred up for so long that it had already spread throughout the town. The people outside had spread rumors that Xiao Hongye was vicious and sinister. Now, everyone was avoiding her. Xiao Weiman despised this daughter of his for making him lose face and dragging down his future, so he was even more displeased with Xiao Hongye. Even Xiao Hongye's younger brother, Xiao Zizhou, felt embarrassed and avoided her when he returned home on the weekends. Xiao Hongye was responsible for taking care of Xiao Weiman's basic necessities at home. Her pair of slender jade fingers had always been fair and tender, but after a few days, they had become slightly rough. Moreover, whenever she dressed up a little cuter and prettier, there would always be people calling her a vixen when she went out to buy groceries. There were even some ignorant children who would rush up and scratch her. A week later, Xiao Hongye learned to be smarter and changed into Yi Qin's old clothes. Clothes make the man. Without her beautiful clothes, without her student temperament, and without the favorable impression of others, the current Xiao Hongye looked like a sloppy old woman from afar. If it wasn't for her youthful face, no one would be able to recognize her if she was thrown into a crowd. If Jing Yunjiao saw the current Xiao Hongye, he might not be able to help but sigh. Xiao Hongye was walking the same path as in her previous life. The old clothes she was wearing now were worn by Jing Yunjiao in his previous life. The work she was doing was exactly the same as in her previous life. Even the insults she received were more or less the same. Harming others, harming oneself. In her previous life, she harmed others. In this life, the wheel of fortune had turned. While Xiao Hongye was experiencing the tribulation of life, Jing Yunjiao's first year of high school classes were coming to an end. The final exams were approaching, and the work given to Pak Yuan had some improvement. Pak Yuan had chosen 4 or 5 factories. The locations were relatively clean and the area was also large. The land in the suburbs of Huaning County was not considered expensive. With Jing Yunzhao's current financial resources, there was basically no pressure. Out of the 4 factories, 2 of them were in the neighboring town. They were originally used for the wine business, so they could be used. However, Jing Yunzhao felt that the location was too remote and directly shook his head to reject it. Moreover, the factory area would definitely expand in the future. Those 2 factories in the town would not be beneficial for future development. Chapter 170. After much consideration, Jing Yunzhao finally settled on a place in Huaning County. It was located in a rather remote location, but fortunately, the location was big enough. As long as it was remodeled and the equipment purchased, it would be able to operate. More importantly, there were dormitories in the factory for the employees to work. There were many small factories in Huaning County, and there were even more people who relied on these factories for their livelihood. However, most of the factories liked to delay the payment of wages. Some people worked for a year and still might not be able to earn money. If it wasn't for the fact that it was close to home, no one would be willing to work like this. Jing Yunzhao didn't think of exploiting the people. When the factory started, other than setting the rules, the main thing was to establish his own reputation. The higher-ups were naturally happy to have another factory in the county. Therefore, Pak Yuan's follow-up went very smoothly. After various procedures were completed, the location of the company was also decided. However, according to Pak Yuan's idea, the headquarters was still set in Ning City. This way, the name would sound better. Anyway, the distance between Ning City and Huaning County wasn't far. It would only take a few hours by car. With Pak Yuan as a good helper, Jing Yunzhao was much more relaxed. These days, he could focus on preparing for the exam. Under the scorching sun, the students in the exam hall were sweating like rain. However, Jing Yunzhao was refreshed. It was inevitable that it created a relaxed atmosphere for the people around him. Jing Yunzhao's results were not unexpected. First in all subjects, first in total score. After experiencing Qiao Hongye's incident, Teacher Qi finally revealed a gratified smile. After all, he had taught for decades. There were very few students who were so smart and so hardworking. In terms of learning, he maintained his ranking. In terms of medical skills, he improved very quickly. When the summer vacation just started, Jing Yunzhao had already absorbed 3 pieces. Currently, he was almost done absorbing the 6th piece of Spirit Jade. In the space, the old ancestor said that one shouldn't be greedy for too many Spirit Jades. However, she felt that her tolerance was stronger than expected. Other than the first time when she absorbed it, she felt a little uncomfortable. After that, the next few times were very smooth. Moreover, she felt like she wasn't full yet. After thinking about it for a while, Jing Yunzhao still decided to give it a try. Fresh blood dripped into the jade, and in an instant, the 2 pieces of Spirit Jade entered her mind at the same time. Jing Yunzhao only felt a buzzing sound in her mind, as if something had exploded. He tried his best to suppress this splitting headache. After a while, the tip of his nose became slightly hot, and 2 streams of blood flowed down. At the side, the little bug wiggled its body and jumped. The blood that dripped from Jing Yunzhao's nose immediately stained its body. The icy blue body shook violently, and the little bug immediately retreated back into the soil. After an unknown amount of time, Jing Yunzhao finally felt his headache get better. He sighed faintly in his heart. Fortunately, it was only 2 pieces. Otherwise, his head would have exploded. The ancestors' words were not without reason. In the future, it was better not to try such things again. However, after a while, Jing Yunzhao realized that after absorbing the 2 pieces of Spirit Jade at the same time, the contents were more vivid and easier to understand. It was as if the memories in the Spirit Jade were originally hers, and naturally merged with her. This kind of benefit made Jing Yunzhao feel a little conflicted. After thinking for a while, he secretly made up his mind. At most 2 pieces. For the sake of medical skills, he could endure the pain for the time being. Exhaling, he looked around. The space had indeed become bigger. He originally thought that there was no difference apart from this, but when he looked carefully, there was actually an additional pond not far away. Chapter 171. The water in the pond was clean, and there was nothing inside. Jing Yunjiao tried to pour the water on the herbs, but found that it didn't have any effect on hastening the growth of the herbs. Only then did she know that there was only one source of blue spring water. This pond was no different from the one outside, just like the soil here. Squeak squeak, he moved his feet and suddenly there was a strange sound. Jing Yunjiao lowered her head to take a look and was shocked. It was an ice blue ball of flesh the size of a fist. Its ears covered its ball-like body, 2 claws on the ground, and there was a pair of wings on both sides of its body. Xiaolan? Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. He was a little uncertain. Xiaolan was a medicinal bug before. Even if it changed its appearance, it should be a butterfly. What was its current appearance? The shape of a cat's ears and the wings were 70% similar to a bat's, but the color was very beautiful. It still had no neck. There was an ice blue piece of flesh on its forehead like a leaf. Its eyes were big and round, and there was a thin and long tail behind it like a vine. Xiaolan tried hard to flap its wings. After a while, it finally rose from the ground. However, those fragile wings seemed to be unable to support its weight. Its entire flight direction was crooked. The other medicinal bugs led by it were neatly arranged and wriggled their bodies. They were obviously very excited. Jing Yunjiao was a little stunned. Currently, there was no record of Xiaolan in the 8th piece of spirit jade. Could it have mutated because of him? Jing Yunjiao poked the fleshy body and saw Xiaolan's excited face squeak again. Jing Yunjiao vaguely remembered that he had a nosebleed just now. Was it because of the blood? After thinking about it, Jing Yunjiao cut his finger and handed it over. However, Xiaolan was not interested. Even the other medicinal bugs did not have any reaction to the smell of blood. If it was not blood, then it was probably the spirit jade. This thing was a treasure brought back by the ancestor from a different world. It was normal that there was energy that was useful to medicinal bugs hidden in it. Especially when it absorbed 2 pieces at once just now, the energy was absorbed by Xiaolan through her blood. It was reasonable that it evolved. Jing Yunjiao did not know that he had guessed half of it right at this time. Although Xiaolan's appearance had changed, it was still a medicinal bug. It was still responsible for leading the other medicinal bugs. And it was obvious that all the medicinal bugs' work efficiency had greatly increased. A few days into the summer vacation, Jing Yunjiao and Grandpa Gan began visiting patients together. The county hospital had strict rules, so Jing Yunjiao could not get involved. However, there were many people who came to see Grandpa Gan privately. Grandpa Gan saw that she was passionate about medicine, so he did not reject bringing her along. To outsiders, he told her that she was his granddaughter. This wasn't the first time that Jing Yunjiao and Grandpa Gan had made a house call, so they were familiar with the process. Little girl Yunjiao, this time, I'll let you take a look at this patient. Grandpa Gan said as they made their way to the hospital. Grandpa Gan's eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to have increased. He looked like he had a lot on his mind. Jing Yunjiao was a little puzzled. Grandpa Gan's medical skills were very good, and he always had a calm and confident look on his face. His current state was completely different from what she usually saw. Grandpa Gan, is the patient in critical condition? Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but ask. Grandpa Gan shook his head, that's not it. It's just that. Sigh, we'll know when we get there. Originally, he did not want to bring Jing Yunjiao over, but since she wanted to be a doctor, she had to be mentally prepared. Not all patients in this world were the same. There were bound to be some with strange personalities. Chapter 172. The two of them sat in the car and soon stopped at the entrance of a small district. The district wasn't big, but it was very quiet and the environment was good. After walking a few steps into the district, they saw a woman walking over. When she saw the old man, she immediately ran forward. Dr. Gan, you're finally here. My mother-in-law is waiting for you. The woman said carefully. This woman looked to be in her early 30s. Her hair was messy and her face was dirty. Her clothes were simple and loose. When they got close, they could smell the smell of oil and smoke. "Let's go." Grandpa Gan looked at her and shook his head with a strange expression. Jing Yunjiao still didn't understand the situation, so he naturally wouldn't say anything. However, the woman noticed her and her eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. "Is this your granddaughter?" The old man nodded. The woman quickly smiled. "She's so pretty. She knows how to go out with you at such a young age. She'll definitely be a genius doctor in the future." The woman's words weren't flattering, so Jing Yunjiao didn't feel any displeasure. She just nodded and thanked her, then followed her into the house. After entering, it was a house of 70 to 80 square meters. The area wasn't big, but the house wasn't old. It was just that the furnishings in the house were a little crowded and the items were very old, exuding a strong musty smell. The house was ventilated, but the doors and windows were closed. The curtains were pulled down, so it felt a lot gloomier. Once they entered the house, they couldn't feel relaxed. "Mom, Dr. Gan is here." The woman carefully opened the bedroom door and called out softly. Jing Yunjiao tilted her head slightly to listen. Presumably, the person in the room was the patient they wanted to treat. But what did the old man mean by his words just now? "Are you trying to scare me to death? Don't you know the rules at all? Don't you know how to knock before entering my house? You're so loud. Do you want me to die early?" Suddenly, an old and sharp voice sounded, scaring Jing Yunjiao. Grandpa Gan, on the other hand, didn't seem to be surprised. He just frowned slightly. This voice was like the buzzing of an electric drill. It was ear-piercing and heart-wrenching, but it came from the mouth of an old woman. The pressure of an elder was even more suffocating. In fact, the woman's movements were already very light, and her voice was soft and gentle. She really didn't know why this old lady would say that her voice was loud. Following the loud shout, the woman stood at the door with a pale face. Not long after, a rustling sound came from the room and the old lady said, "Why aren't you helping me put on my clothes? What use do I have for you?" The woman's body shook violently, and she hurried into the room to help. "Be gentle. So clumsy. This dress is so ugly. Are you trying to embarrass me in front of the guests? I've never seen someone as stupid as you. You can't do your job well, you can't give birth to a child, and you're always finding trouble for my son. If this was in ancient times, someone like you would have been banished a long time ago." For more than 10 minutes, Jing Yunjiao's ears never stopped ringing. She couldn't help but sympathize with this woman. Although her clothes were a little shabby, her appearance was very good. But why did she have to suffer so much after marrying into such a family? After being reborn, every time she thought of her cowardly appearance in her previous life, she felt that she was wasting her life. But after all, she was still young at that time, and it was hard for her to resist. But this woman was different. She suffered so much, and yet she still wanted to waste her time in this house. How could she endure the feeling of being insulted and trampled on? Jing Yunjiao's mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts. After a while, the old lady who was yelling finally walked out with the help of the woman. Chapter 173. The old lady was dressed in traditional Chinese attire. Her face was filled with happiness, and her slightly plump body was almost pressed against the woman beside her. She was wearing a pearl necklace around her neck and a golden ring on her finger. She had a lazy look on her face, but when she walked, she kept crying out "Ayo, ayo" non-stop. It was only a few steps, but after walking for a while, she finally fell onto the sofa. She raised her eyes to look at old man Gan and said, "Dr. Gan, can you prescribe some more medicine for me? My body is still hurting and itching." Dr. Gan secretly shook his head. He walked over and took her pulse. "Your problem isn't that serious to begin with. You'll be fine after taking this medicine for a few days. You're itching again. Is it because you've been eating seafood recently?" If it wasn't for the fact that he had already paid the consultation fee and promised to treat this old lady, he wouldn't have wasted his time with this old lady. "Who's the one who wronged me? My old bones are hurting like crazy. How can I not listen to the doctor? I've been taking this medicine every day, and I've been avoiding certain foods. Seong-jin, don't you think so? The old lady opened her mouth and howled. She lifted her eyes to look at the woman and asked. The woman was startled and hesitated. Elder Gan was certain that Seong-jin didn't want to lie, but she dared to speak the truth. He didn't want her to speak, so as to prevent this old lady from making a fuss again. He simply wrote a prescription. I've added a medicine to your prescription. Take it on time, but if it relapses again, I can't do anything about it. Oh right, girl, take her pulse. Elder Gan said this, but his face was already showing signs of annoyance. The old man had always had a good temper. Even Jing Yunjiao rarely saw him like this. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. Some people had terminal illnesses that couldn't be treated, but some people didn't cherish their own bodies. They gambled with their own bodies and played around with others. Jing Yunjiao really didn't understand the point of treating a patient like this. Jing Yunjiao stepped forward. The old lady looked at her with some dissatisfaction, but because Grandpa Gan was there, she endured it and let her take the pulse. However, the old lady was a little impatient. In the blink of an eye, she pulled her hand back, giving him a look that said, I've already given you a chance. Jing Yunjiao asked a few more questions, but the old lady still ignored him. Instead, it was the woman next to her who answered carefully. The old lady's waist was not good. When it hurt the most, she could not walk at all. Moreover, her whole body was itchy and unbearable. Jing Yunjiao then asked the old man about the medicine, but he found something very funny. The old man's medicine was to treat the root of the problem. After drinking it, the pain would be relieved. Only when the body was in good health would the itch be relieved. However, the room was filled with a faint ointment smell, especially on the old lady's body. The smell was completely different from the old man's medicine. Old lady, it's useless to cover your body with antipruritic ointment. The illness is caused by the body. If you don't take the medicine on time, your illness will not be cured. Jing Yunjiao faintly said. This old lady treated others like livestock. She ordered them around, but she didn't take their kind advice to heart. The old lady glared at Seong-jin, who was standing at the side. Little slut, you're the one who talked nonsense to others. I really want to tear your mouth apart. You talk nonsense in front of outsiders all day long. Why don't you go die? Jing Yunjiao frowned. His attitude was slightly cold. You're scolding the wrong person. I have a good sense of smell. I can smell the medicine on your body. Jing Yunjiao coldly snorted and said, We don't care how you teach your daughter-in-law, but please restrain yourself. Don't insult the doctor's prescription just to torment your daughter-in-law. There are more people waiting to be treated. Chapter 174. As soon as Old Man Gan heard that this old lady used the antipruritic ointment behind his back and didn't put his prescription in her eyes, he immediately became angry. If this old lady didn't listen to his advice and wasn't willing to use the medicine, then so be it, but now she clearly didn't believe in his medical skills. No matter how good his temperament was, he couldn't continue to tangle with her. Just like Jing Yunjiao said, he, Gan Songbai, was considered a famous doctor in Hua Ning County, even in the entire Ning city. There were many people who wanted him to treat their illnesses. This old lady's ruckus didn't just delay his own time. Frowning, the old man glanced at Seong-jin and said, It's not that I don't want to save her, but your mother-in-law is too stubborn. Dr. Gan, don't be angry. My mother-in-law, it's not that she doesn't believe in your medical skills. She's just angry with me. Seong-jin said anxiously. Her mother-in-law was not willing to go to the hospital. She always said that she was old and that the moment she went to the hospital, she would be tainted with bad luck. If she brought her to the hospital, she would die. If she wanted her to go in vertically and come out horizontally, she had no choice but to find a doctor outside. Other than Gan Songbai, there were 4 or 5 other doctors who came before, but they were all angered by her mother-in-law and left. She had no choice but to beg Gan Songbai. The old man also took into account his previous friendship with the Seong family, so he specially made a few trips, but her mother-in-law still didn't cooperate. Seong-jin, I originally agreed to come because I saw that you were filial to your mother-in-law and gave you face. But now that the patient isn't cooperating, this old man has no other choice. I will return the consultation fee in full later. Forgive me for not accompanying you. Gan Songbai said angrily. He had never seen such an unreasonable old lady. Seong Jin, do you want me to die before you're satisfied? You can't cure me and still splash dirty water on me. I'm telling you, when this doctor leaves, you and my son will divorce. I definitely won't tolerate you. Get out of our Qin family. There are many women who like my son. I don't want a thing like you who occupies the chicken coop but can't lay eggs. The old lady didn't talk to old man Gan and directly pointed at Seong Jin and started to curse. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. Was this an elder? She was clearly a scoundrel. When Seong Jin heard this, her eyes immediately turned red and she gritted her teeth. Jing Yunzhao was suddenly curious. What kind of person was Seong Jin's husband? He actually had such an explosive mother. More importantly, could it be that he was a peerless good man in other aspects that made Seong Jin refuse to divorce him? Seong Jin looked embarrassed. Dr. Gan, can you give me another chance? Gan Songbai was also speechless. His old face twitched. He sighed and glanced at the old lady. Come out with me first. Seong Jin hurriedly responded, and the three of them closed the door. A cool breeze blew from the outside, and the corridor was rather quiet, which made the people's anger subside a little. Old man Gan sighed. Seong Jin, if your father knew that you were living like this, I'm afraid he would strangle that old lady to death. When he said that, Jing Yunzhao looked at the two of them in surprise. The old man actually knew Seong Jin's father? Seong Jin instantly shed tears. Uncle Gan, thank you for treating my father's illness before. If it wasn't for you, my father wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long, but I can't do anything now. My father has passed away. I'm her only daughter. Right now, my mother still has to rely on the Qin family's money to support her. I can't divorce him for the time being. Even if I don't want to listen to my mother-in-law's words, I can only listen. Seong Jin's face was sorrowful as she shook her head and said. Jing Yunzhao was a little confused. This Qin family didn't seem to be very well off. Chapter 175. Gan Songbai also found her words strange and asked a few more questions. Only then did Jing Yunzhao understand that Seong Jin's life could only be described as too horrible to look at. Seong Jin's husband's name was Qin Ji Shui, her university classmate. Later, they fell in love and got married. However, Qin Ji Shui's family background wasn't good, and the Seong family used to run a pretty good company. Seong Jin's father only had one daughter, so he doted on her a lot. The money for the wedding was all taken care of by the Seong family. Not long after the couple got married, Seong Jin's father fell seriously ill in bed. Seong Jin took over the family business and became the company's CEO. However, Qin Ji Shui was the opposite. His work outside wasn't going well. Others mocked him for being inferior to a woman. Some even bluntly said that with his status, why should he go out and look for a job? He could just stay at home and be Seong Jin's gigolo, taking care of the wife and teaching the child. Because of this, Qin Ji Shui was very angry and refused to go home until he was drunk. At that time, Seong Jin's father passed away and the company was in a mess. Seong Jin thought that the husband and wife were one and couldn't bear to lose both her father and her husband, so she hired her husband with a high salary to take on an important position in the company. Qin Ji Shui's abilities became more and more outstanding in the Seong family's company, and their relationship became better and better. However, to Qin Ji Shui, his perfect life had a flaw. No matter how good his work was, others would think that he was basking in Seong Jin's light. Sometimes, he couldn't help but feel depressed because of this, especially when he knew that if it weren't for his wife, he wouldn't have such a job. After 2 years of this feeling, Qin Ji Shui started to hope that Seong Jin could stay at home and take care of the child. Not long after, Seong Jin was indeed pregnant. In order to take care of Seong Jin, Qin Ji Shui requested to bring his mother over to live with him. The most painful time began. Old Madam Qin used to treat Seong Jin quite well, but after her son's work became better and better, she felt that Seong Jin was blocking her son's path. During Seong Jin's pregnancy, she was eccentric at home all day long. Every time this happened, Qin Ji Shui would comfort her gently, letting her be immersed in his sweet words. Under Qin Ji Shue's guidance, Xiong Jin slowly handed over some of the company's projects to him. Within a few months, the company had completely changed owners. At that time, they were husband and wife anyways, so it didn't matter who owned the company. However, it didn't take long for this idea to be completely destroyed. Without the company, she became a parasite in the Qin family. The old lady despised her for freeloading every day. During her pregnancy, she was under a lot of pressure. Later, her husband ignored her, causing her to be in a trance. When she went downstairs, she missed a step and lost the child. Qin Ji Shue's attitude towards her became colder and colder. Old Madame Qin simply said that she wasn't used to life in Ning City and insisted on moving back to Hua Ning County no matter what. She even insisted on having her daughter-in-law accompany and serve her. Xiong Jin was naturally unwilling, but Qin Ji Shue simply used her mother to threaten her. When Xiong Jin's father died, Xiong Jin's mother suffered a bit of shock and couldn't recognize anyone anymore. Moreover, she started spouting crazy words and had been receiving treatment in the hospital. Now, Qin Ji Shue said that if she didn't listen to him, he wouldn't care about her anymore. Xiong Jin had no choice but to let Qin Ji Shue torment her. She had thought of filing a lawsuit. After all, this company originally belonged to her, but she had personally signed those documents back then. Moreover, the funds of the Xiong family's company were slowly transferred away, and Qin Ji Shue used that money to do other businesses. Now, the company had already undergone a complete makeover. When Jing Yunjiao finished listening, he sighed in his heart. Xiong Jin was too foolish, but the wolf hid it well. From her description, Qin Ji Shue did indeed treat her well in the beginning. It was indeed too difficult to guard against such a person. Chapter 176. Jing Yunjiao didn't have the intention to meddle in other people's business, but because Gan Songbai and the Xiong family knew each other in the past, his expression was a bit heavy right now. Even if I save this old lady, she won't know how to repay the kindness. She might even torment you even more. How about this, you bring me to see your mother? Gan Songbai pondered for a moment before suggesting. If you're willing to make a trip, that'd be great. It's just that Qin Ji Shue won't let me leave Hua Ning County at all. He used the name of the patient's family to reject all visitors. I can't see my mother at all. Xiong Jin was also a bit anxious. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips. He was a bit tempted by this Xiong Jin. Currently, the company was lacking manpower. It was easy to recruit ordinary employees, but there were very few capable ones. If what Xiong Jin said was true, then recruiting her under his banner should be a pretty good choice. However, Jing Yunjiao wouldn't reveal the company's matters before confirming whether she had the ability or not. Now that Xiong Jin said this, Gan Songbai also had no other choice. Just as the grudge between them was bleak, Xiong Jin sighed. My father used to like researching antiques, so he got to know Ning City's CEO Tang. Their relationship was very good, but I've never met CEO Tang and don't have his contact information. If she could contact the Tang family, she'd definitely give it a try, even if the Tang family rejected her request in the end. She remembered that her father used to like going to the Tang family to observe those good things. After he came back, he'd vividly tell her about it. It was just that their Xiong family wasn't considered a big company and their financial resources couldn't compare to the Tang family. Her father only went to the Tang family to satisfy his cravings. Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. Truly, there were no stories without coincidences. You're talking about Elder Tang Lin? Jing Yunjiao still asked. That's right. Xiong Jin was stunned. Jing Yunjiao exhaled. I can give you his number, but I'm not sure if he'll help you. After all, so many years have passed. It's still unknown if he'll remember someone like you. How could Elder Tang's private number be so easy to get? Otherwise, Xiong Jin wouldn't be so helpless until now. Hearing Jing Yunjiao's words, Xiong Jin was completely stunned. She didn't know if it was true or false. Even Gan Songbai looked at her in surprise. He didn't quite understand. When did this girl become acquainted with Ning City's leading figure? And there was even a way to contact him. Really? Xiong Jin's heart almost stopped beating. Why don't I give you my phone? You can contact them now. But I have a request. Jing Yunjiao paused for a moment before he continued. If Elder Tang is willing to help you, you can look for this person after you settle your family matters. If he recognizes you, you will need to work in his company. Is that okay? Jing Yunjiao took out a business card with Pak Yuan's contact information. Jing Yunjiao's attitude was a little strange, which confused both of them. However, Xiong Jin reacted quickly. At this time, it was related to her mother, so she immediately nodded. The next second, Jing Yunjiao handed her the phone. At this time, Elder Tang was leisurely drinking afternoon tea when a call came in. Seeing Jing Yunjiao's name on the screen, he couldn't help but feel a little better. However, when he picked up the phone, he heard an unfamiliar female voice. When he heard it again, his face turned ugly. There weren't many people that he could call friends with, and this old Xiong was one of them. Although many years had passed, he still remembered their previous friendship. After old Xiong died, he wanted to take care of the Xiong family. However, after investigating, he found that Xiong Jin's husband was not bad, so he let it go. In the end, it was all an illusion. Chapter 177. Grandfather Tang immediately sent someone to investigate again. Xiong Jin, on the other hand, felt much more relaxed after receiving his promise. She felt like the gloomy clouds that had been pressing down on her head for so many years had dispersed in an instant. Thank you, little sister. Don't worry, I'll definitely. Little slut, what are you dawdling outside for? You can't even keep a person here. What use are you? I'm hungry, hurry and come back to cook for me. Xiong Jin hadn't finished speaking when the old lady's insults came through the door. Jing Yunjiao's brows twitched, only to see Xiong Jin clenching her fists, her eyes bursting with hatred. I'll go in first, Uncle Gan, you. Xiong Jin's brows loosened. Now, she could see that there was some cleanliness. Since your problem has been solved for you, then I won't take care of this patient anymore, Gan Songbai said directly. These days, the ruckus made him restless. Originally, he wanted to bring Jing Yunjiao here to learn, but who knew that this old lady would be even fiercer than before. However, looking at Jing Yunjiao's previous attitude, it was clear that he also had confidence in that illness. His standard wasn't inferior to his Xiong Jin didn't insist on keeping them here. After sending off Jing Yunjiao and Gan Songbai, she returned to her house alone. Not long after, the insults came one after another. The neighbors didn't care, after all, it was like this every day. Only, they didn't know that this time, the old lady's insults were because Xiong Jin ignored her. Her waist wasn't good, and when it was serious, she couldn't move. When Xiong Jin returned home, she directly locked the door and entered her own house. The old lady was still hung on the sofa. She didn't cook, and the medicine wasn't boiled like before. It was as if the old lady didn't even exist in the house. This angered the old lady to death. She only yelled for a few hours, but Xiong Jin didn't move. Her phone wasn't by her side, so she couldn't call her son. Due to her anger, her body became more and more uncomfortable. She couldn't move at all. Her whole body was itchy, and there were many scratches on her body. At this time, the old lady was somewhat regretful. There were many ways to torment Xiong Jin, but she should have recovered first. On the other side, the old man's speed was very fast. Qin Ji Shui's company was under pressure from Ning City's tycoon. Gan Songbai was worried about Xiong Jin, so he specially sent Jing Yunjiao over to take a look. As a result, he was completely stunned when he entered the room. Xiong Jin had been tortured by the Qin family for a few years, and the resentment in her heart was not small. Now that she had rebounded, in just a few days, she had tortured the old lady until she was no longer human. At this time, the old lady was still lying on the sofa. When she saw Jing Yunjiao, she opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Her hoarse voice couldn't make any sound. There were only some fruit pits in front of her. They must have been placed on the table a long time ago, and the old lady happened to come across them. Did I scare you? When Xiong Jin saw her, the hostility in her eyes lessened a little. Jing Yunjiao shook his head. It's okay, but if she starves to death, you'll be the one to suffer. The old lady must have been living on the fruits in front of her for the past few days. She ate, drank, and defecated in the living room. She was weak and sick. If she died, Seong-jin would definitely be responsible. However, Jing Yunjiao didn't sympathize with this old lady. If it was her, she would have done it under the condition of protecting herself. Don't worry, Qin Ji Shui will be back today because I've already informed him of my divorce. Speaking of divorce, Seong-jin's eyes flashed with joy. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips. No wonder her dressing today was different from before. It was as if she had regained her vitality. She was dressed appropriately, without the sloppy, decadent, and busy feeling from before. Presumably, these past few days were the most relaxed she had been in years. The smell in the house was heavy. Seong-jin dragged her to sit on a chair in the neighborhood for a while. Not long after, a man rushed out of a car. When he saw Seong-jin, he said, "Are you crazy? Do you know how busy I've been recently? Finding trouble for me at this time. Do you still want to take care of your mother?" Chapter 178. The man's appearance was very upright. He was in his 30s and looked mature and steady. His clothes were neat and tidy, not a single hair out of place. His appearance was extremely gentle, indeed the type that easily attracted women. However, right now, his anxious and angry appearance was exposed, making him look a little sinister. When he got closer, he could even smell the scent of alcohol. Qin Ji Shui thought that the person sitting with his wife was a child from the neighborhood, but upon closer inspection, she looked very unfamiliar. He didn't place her in his eyes at all. Seong-jin glared at Qin Ji Shui with eyes full of hatred and said sharply, "You've received the divorce agreement. Since that's the case, sign it. Otherwise, don't blame me for taking this to court." "You really dare? Seong-jin, have I indulged you for too long? All these years, I've worked so hard outside, wasn't it all for you and my mother to have a stable life? Now you're asking for a divorce. What right do you have? Why don't you think about it? With your current appearance, are you worthy of me? If it weren't for me remembering our old relationship, you would have been chased out of the house long ago. And your mother too. I pay such a large sum of money for you every month, isn't that enough?" Qin Ji Shui said angrily. However, after speaking, he realized that the wife in front of him seemed to have changed. Previously, every time he came back, Seong-jin would be cooking most of the time. She wore loose clothes and had unkempt hair and a dirty face. Looking at her made him want to vomit. Compared to those women outside, Seong-jin didn't have any redeeming qualities. But today, she had light makeup on her face and her long hair was tied up neatly. She wore a pair of small leather shoes and her previous professional attire. Although the style was very old-fashioned, it had a different kind of charm on her. Qin Ji Shui shook his head inwardly. Why was he thinking about this? He must have been too busy recently, that's why he thought that Seong-jin looked better than before. Seong-jin had already experienced her most desperate times. Qin Ji Shui's words couldn't arouse her anger at all. Instead, it made her feel that she was really blind back then. "Qin Ji Shui, you relied on my Seong family's assets to get to where you are today, yet you're standing here telling me that everything I have is because of you. Don't you find it ironic?" Seong-jin mocked, then continued, "I asked you to come here to inform you that I'm definitely getting a divorce. I don't want to talk nonsense with you, crazy woman. Where's my mother?" Qin Ji Shui glared at her in annoyance. He didn't believe that she really wanted a divorce at all. Instead, he felt disdain. "Your mother? Huh. Fortunately, you came in time today. If you were a few days later, I reckon you can only collect her corpse." Seong-jin sneered. With that said, Qin Ji Shui went upstairs without another word. Seong-jin wasn't in a hurry. She just waited below. Seeing Qin Shuiji's nervous expression, she felt even more delighted. When the starving old madam saw Qin Ji Shui, tears overflowed from her eyes. She whimpered, but her throat felt like it was on fire and she couldn't speak. However, this silent accusation was even more useful, as it increased Qin Ji Shui's hatred towards Seong-jin by another layer. However, Qin Ji Shui was used to living a good life these past few years. Seeing his own mother in such a sorry state, he still felt a little disdainful. The filth on her body made him feel disgusted. He was a man, How could he do such a thing? So after pouring a glass of water for the old lady, Qin Shui walked down again. He stared at Xiong-jin and directly raised his hand. The air seemed to have frozen. Xiong-jin's pupils instantly shrunk, but she had already calmed down. As long as he made a move, she would immediately go and examine the injury. However, the situation she expected didn't happen. Before that hand landed on Xiong-jin, Jing Yunjiao had already sent a backhand slap towards the man. I hate men who hit women the most. Chapter 179. Perhaps a few years ago, this Qin Shui could still be considered a positive, kind, and gentle young man, but after he schemed against his own wife, his bottom line and principles became dispensable. He'd even completely developed into a selfish hypocrite. Jing Yunjiao made her move. Her strength wasn't any less than a man's, and Qin Shui was immediately flung into the air, spinning in a circle. He was stunned for a few seconds, then in the next moment, it was as if he wanted to eat Jing Yunjiao up. You dare hit me. He'd been rolling around in the business world all these years. Although he was busy, his starting point was high, so his days were unrestrained. His company was small, and although he couldn't climb up to those big shots in Ning City, he was still considered a rather famous young entrepreneur. When others saw him, they'd always treat him with respect. But these few days, unlucky things happened one after another. His company was mysteriously found to have problems, and the projects he was currently working on couldn't be developed anymore. Those partners had always seen the strong and stepped on the weak. Once they saw that he wasn't doing well, those who should withdraw their investments did so, and there were even some who didn't even pick up his calls. Everything happened too quickly. He even suspected that he'd offended someone. You live in this small district. Who are your parents? How did they raise such a child with no upbringing like you? Qin Shui immediately raged. When Xiong-jin heard this, she didn't wait for Jing Yunjiao to speak and immediately shielded her behind her. You don't need to find trouble with her, you deserve to be hit. I say, why did you suddenly change so much? Was it this little girl and her parents who instigated you? In this world, there'll always be people who can't bear to see others doing well, meddling in other people's business. Xiong-jin, I'm warning you, I can let you off this time, but you must immediately make this little girl scram far, far away. Go back to the house and tidy up my mother. I let you return to Ning County for my mother, but you actually bullied her to this extent. Qin Shui continued, believing himself to be infallible. Xiong-jin didn't have the slightest bit of reluctance towards him. When she heard this, she simply turned around and left. Bully. She had been insulted all these years. Who was the one who bullied who? If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to cause trouble for the Tang family and Jing Yunjiao, she would have fiercely kicked up a fuss and made Qin Shui regret his actions. However, right now, she had to rely on others for everything, so she didn't have the confidence or the ability to do so. But one day, she would rely on herself and make Qin Shui understand that taking advantage of her Xiong family meant he had to pay it back 1,000 times, 10,000 times over. Xiong-jin raised her head and puffed out her chest. Her gaze was firm. She had already called the people sent by Grandfather Tang. Now, as long as she left this neighborhood, Qin Shui would no longer be able to control her. Qin Shui didn't expect Xiong-jin's temper to be so bad. In a fit of anger, he hurriedly contacted his people in the hospital and tried to use Xiong-jin's mother as a threat. However, the moment the call connected, the person on the other end told him that someone had already moved Mother Xiong away. Qin Shui was dumbfounded. The Xiong family didn't have any relatives, so who did it? Xiong-jin. However, she had always been in Ning County and didn't have much money on her. How could she have the ability? Moreover, he hadn't heard the slightest bit of news these past few days. Qin Shui wasn't an idiot. When he recalled the setbacks he'd suffered recently, a chill ran down his spine. Did Xiong-jin know someone he couldn't afford to offend? But after so many years, he hadn't seen anyone speak up for Xiong-jin. Why would they suddenly appear? Qin Shui hurriedly chased after her, but when he reached the entrance of the neighborhood, he saw that Xiong-jin had already gotten into the car. He could vaguely see that other than the driver, there was only a young man inside the car. However, That car was a luxurious limited edition, worth tens of millions. How could an ordinary family afford it? And the person sitting inside the car was precisely Tang Zihua. Chapter 180. Jing Yunjiao also didn't expect grandfather Tang to value Xiong-jin so much that he'd actually let his precious grandson pick her up personally. Tang Zihua sat in the front passenger seat and looked at Jing Yunjiao through the rearview mirror. She didn't seem to be affected by the summer as her skin was still white and tender. Under this kind of temperature that would make people irritable, her slightly cold face could always make people's moods calm down a bit. Auntie Xiong, grandfather will help you handle the divorce matter. When the time comes, you just have to show your face, Tang Zihua said in a weak voice. His complexion now was actually not much different from a normal person's, but after all, his foundation wasn't too good, so he still had to continue nurturing it. Xiong-jin was a little nervous. Thank you. She was too anxious at the time and actually didn't expect Chairman Tang to help. After all, although her father and Chairman Tang had a good relationship in the past, it had already been so many years. You're too polite. Grandfather said that the person you should thank should be Jing Yunjiao. If it wasn't for her, the Tang family wouldn't have known that you suffered so much in Huaning County. Oh right, grandfather asked me to arrange a house for you. You can stay there for the time being. If you want to return to Ning City in the future, just let him know and he'll pick a new place for you. Tang Zihua knew when to advance and retreat, speaking like an adult. Jing Yunjiao didn't notice Tang Zihua's slightly stiff expression. Recently, grandfather saw that his health was getting better and better, so he would constantly praise Jing Yunjiao in front of him, causing him to feel a sense of reverence whenever he saw Jing Yunjiao. He always felt that he should be more mature and steady. So when he finished speaking just now, Tang Zihua took the opportunity to carefully glance at her again. When he saw that Jing Yunjiao's gaze was wandering outside the window, he sighed in relief. After being treated by Jing Yunjiao for so long, he'd seen her stern expression many times. Every time he saw her, he felt like he was meeting his parents. But Jing Yunjiao was clearly the same age as him. This was too strange. Tang Zihua sent Xiong-jin all the way to the house she'd settled in. Everything was perfect. Over at Qin Ji Shue's side, he was in a terrible fix. With Xiong-jin running away, there was no one to take care of the old lady. Qin Ji Shue had no choice but to ask the neighbors for help. When the neighbors saw how much he despised his own mother, they were naturally unhappy. However, Qin Ji Shue had money, so he immediately took out a few banknotes and settled the old lady down. But how could it work if they only dealt with the surface problems? He had to worry about the old lady's basic necessities, food, shelter, and transportation. Also, her illness had to be treated. After careful consideration, Qin Ji Shue brought the old lady back to Ning City. There was a nanny there, which could save him a lot of trouble. But in reality, the bitter days had only just begun. 3 days later, Qin Ji Shue learned of a shocking fact. Someone saw that he was being rebuffed everywhere and finally gave him a piece of advice. The moment he opened his mouth, he actually asked him to bring Xiong-jin back. Qin Ji Shue had long guessed that this matter was related to Xiong-jin, but he still couldn't take it. He hurriedly asked for more details, and only then did he find out that his father-in-law, who had died early, was actually grandfather Tang's good friend. Qin Shueji immediately knew that he was finished. Even if he begged all the big shots in Ning City, it was impossible to change the outcome of his company going bankrupt. What should they do? Could it be that he had to find Xiong-jin? A real man knows when to yield and when not to yield. On the day he received the news, after much deliberation, Qin Ji Shue still chose between his dignity and his company. He rushed back from Ning City overnight, but he didn't know where Xiong-jin was. After asking the security guards and the neighbors several times, he only knew that the little girl with his wife was the granddaughter of a doctor. As for that doctor, he was extremely famous in Huaning County. Qin Ji Shue's reaction was extremely fast. After all these years, he'd also trained himself to be thick-skinned. As soon as the sun rose, he rushed straight to the county hospital. Chapter 181. Gan Song Bai was very famous in the county hospital. Qin Shuiji wanted to find him, so after asking around a little, he immediately found the consultation room. Seeing the old man's amiable appearance, Qin Shuiji let out a sigh of relief. He already had a faint feeling of victory in his heart. He immediately stepped forward and shook hands. "Hello, you must be Gan Songbai, Dr. Gan?" Gan Songbai was stunned, but there were many people who came to find him these past few years, so he didn't find it strange. He only nodded politely. "Is there something you need from me?" This person didn't have a number. Although his complexion wasn't too good, looking at his anxious appearance, he obviously wasn't here to see a doctor. At this moment, there were still several patients waiting in the consultation room. Qin Shuiji saw them and felt more confident. His expression became slightly more serious. "Dr. Gan, I've finally found you. I really didn't expect that a reputable and capable old doctor like you would do such a thing. I asked you to treat my old mother, but look at you, you almost killed her. Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the surrounding patients immediately changed. This Gan family was a family with a heritage of doctors. They were very famous in Huaning County. The county hospital spent a lot of money to invite Gan Songbai to come and treat patients, giving him a lot of freedom. He was more or less different from other doctors. Because of his great reputation, there were many people who wanted Dr. Gan to treat them, causing his #1 consultation room to be hard to come by. But even so, Gan Songbai was still the most popular doctor in the county hospital. The others were also used to seeing patients' families give Dr. Gan silk banners and awards, but this was the first time they saw someone say that he almost killed someone. "What are you saying? Slander is illegal," the young doctor at the side immediately said. "I'm not talking nonsense. Dr. Gan, you wouldn't deny that you've treated my mother, right? I'm Qin Jiguo, Xiong Jin is my wife. Everyone in our neighborhood knows that you come to our house every 2 to 3 days. You can't deny this debt." Qin Jishue's words were clear and organized. Although he was looking for trouble, he wasn't anxious at all. This appearance instead gave others the illusion that he was very reasonable. In addition to his dignified appearance, his suit and tie were neat and tidy, and he looked refined. It was easy for people to believe him. Gan Songbai didn't expect this person to be Xiong Jin's husband, Qin Jishue. But seeing his actions and recalling Xiong Jin's words, his impression of this man instantly fell to the bottom. Originally, he thought that his patient had really met with an accident, but now he couldn't wait to throw this person out. "I did treat your mother's illness and prescribed her medicine, but your mother didn't take my medical advice to heart. She didn't take the medicine on time at all. Furthermore, I only treated her a few days ago. That day, I had already made it clear that I wouldn't continue to treat her. Furthermore, the consultation fee has already been refunded. Furthermore, your mother's waist bone problem isn't life-threatening," Grandpa Gan said angrily. Such a thick-skinned person was really rare. Xiong Jin, that girl, must have been blind in the past to actually fall for this kind of man. But looking at his recent actions, Gan Songbai could imagine how this man with a human face but a beast's heart treated Xiong Jin in the past. If he could even use his own wife, what kind of character did he have? After all, old man Gan still had some dignity. Once he opened his mouth to explain, his colleagues nodded in understanding. But now that Qin Jishue had come knocking on their door, others didn't know the truth, so it wasn't good for them to interfere. Although the doctors and nurses understood Gan Songbai's character, the patients were different. After hearing Qin Jishue's words, they were more or less afraid and nervous. Even though old man Gan had opened his mouth to explain, they still felt a little uncomfortable. Chapter 182. Qin Jishue only had this path left, and he was already driven to desperation. Since he'd already come, he'd already prepared his speech, so how could he be dismissed by the old man's words? "Dr. Gan, I respect you a lot, but it's clearly the medicine you prescribed that isn't effective, so how can you blame it on my mother? After my mother contracted that illness, her whole body itched uncomfortably and she more or less had a temper. But you, on the other hand, not only did you not take on the responsibility of saving the dying and healing the injured, you even used your glib tongue to coax my wife, making her ignore my mother. My mother's condition isn't good, so after being placed on the sofa for a few days, she almost starved to death, and her illness got worse and worse. Seeing that you're also a reputable doctor, I didn't look for you to settle the debt, but you're great, you actually abducted my wife. No matter what, I can't tolerate this. If you don't give me an explanation today, don't blame me for making a fuss about it. After Qin Ji Shue's words, the surrounding people widened their eyes in disbelief. Dr. Gan abducted his wife. What kind of joke was this? This Dr. Gan Song Bai was already so old, how could he possibly do such a thing? What's more, no matter what kind of patient he treated, Dr. Gan had always been extremely meticulous in his care. It was impossible for him to lie to others and disregard a patient. It was just that Qin Ji Shue's righteous words and the suppressed anger were all displayed on his face, making it impossible for people to not believe him. When Gan Song Bai heard this, his chest heaved up and down in anger, and he almost fainted. All his life, he'd only heard respectful words from others. This was the first time someone had accused him of having no medical ethics in front of so many people. You scoundrel, scram. Under Gan Song Bai's rage, he directly picked up the things on the table and threw them at him. His old face was taut and stern as he panted heavily. He simply couldn't stand this kind of slander. However, he was still a medical practitioner and didn't like to socialize with others. In terms of eloquence, he naturally couldn't compare to Qin Ji Shue, a young man who'd been in the business world for many years. With just the word scoundrel, he was already at a disadvantage. Qin Ji Shue was delighted. He had heard from the old lady that Xiong Jin did not see many outsiders. Most of her social circle was her neighbors. Other than that, the only people she had been in contact with recently were the old man and his granddaughter. Moreover, old Madame Tang had clearly mentioned that the old man had called Xiong Jin out on the day of the treatment. He had talked for a long time, and she could vaguely hear them saying things like Elder Tang and good friend. It was also on that day that Xiong Jin had started to ignore her after returning to the room. Therefore, the reason why he had fallen into such a situation was ultimately the fault of this old man and his granddaughter. He wanted to find Xiong Jin now. If he used ordinary methods, it would definitely not work. This old man might even humiliate him. Rather than that, it would be better to say that his wife had been deceived and ruined the old man's reputation. He did not believe that the old man would not reveal Xiong Jin's whereabouts in order to protect himself. Qin Ji Shue's calculations were crystal clear. Now that he saw that Gan Song Bai's anger wasn't light, he added fuel to the fire and continued, "Old doctor, you're also an old man. You should have children, right? Even if you don't care about your reputation, I believe that your family still cares about it. What's more, you also had a mother, right? Don't you know that children are filial to their mothers? I don't blame you for not being willing to treat my mother, but you should have just said it. Why did you have to brainwash my wife and make her do such a thing? Luckily, my mother was fine, or else I would have become a person without a mother. My mother put in so much effort to raise me, yet she ended up like that. I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Chapter 183. Qin Ji Shue's voice wasn't loud. Compared to other people making a ruckus, his state was more like a simple accusation. However, every word was like a knife stabbing into Gan Song Bai's heart, causing him to feel waves of pain in his head. "Dr. Gan, please calm down. I'll call the director over right now." The nurse at the side panicked and hurriedly ran out. Qin Ji Shue didn't let go and continued with a serious face, "Call him then. I also want to see the director of your hospital. Don't tell me you all allow doctors to do such immoral things." "Oh right, Dr. Gan, where did you hide my wife? I beg you to be merciful and let our family go." "Bastard. Simply unreasonable." Gan Song Bai slammed the table in anger, his face turning green. "You're clearly the one abusing your wife." Before he could finish speaking, Qin Ji Shue directly interrupted, "How am I abusing my wife? I just had some small conflicts with her recently. You can't do such immoral things just because of this." Qin Ji Shue only felt refreshed at this moment. Recently, because of the company's matters, he had been criticized everywhere. Every day, he would be despised and humiliated. Now that he saw the main culprit behind all this, He naturally couldn't let him off so easily. Gan Song-bai wanted to explain, but the other party completely blocked his words and even wanted to accuse him of a crime. This made him even more anxious and angry. He also felt extremely sullen. Ever since he left that small district that day, he hadn't seen Seong-jin again. He didn't know that old Madam Chin had almost starved to death. Because he knew that the Tang family had interfered in this matter, he also put his heart back into his stomach. He only asked Jing Yunjiao to go over and show some concern. He didn't contact that junior himself. But who would have thought that such an unexpected disaster would suddenly appear? At this moment, he couldn't defend himself. The outside of the consultation room was filled with people. Those people looked at him with eyes full of disdain. This was the first time the old doctor had encountered such a situation. He only felt that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. If it weren't for his old age and weak legs, he would have definitely rushed up and beat this Qin Jishui up. However, after thinking it over, Gan Song-bai still couldn't think of a way. This matter could only be explained by the parties involved. If this continued, his reputation would be ruined. Gan Song-bai shakily picked up his phone and called Jing Yunjiao. At this time, the voices of the patients and their family members outside had changed from whispers to loud accusations. Aya, this old man is a doctor. How can there be such an indecent old man in this world? With such a character, who would dare to seek treatment from him? Don't say that. My friend's uncle's child's classmate was cured by Dr. Gan. I heard that his medical skills are very good. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? This man had already come knocking on her door. How could it be a misunderstanding? Just because he's good at medicine doesn't mean that he's good in other aspects. He's old, but he's still destroying other people's families. Not only did he kidnap people, but he also almost starved their old mother to death. Tell me, if we don't give that person justice, is there still justice? As soon as the director arrived, he heard people pointing and cursing at him. He felt sweat dripping down his forehead. The weather was already hot, and now that such a thing happened, it made it even harder for people to breathe. Everyone stop arguing. What's going on? Sir, if you casually slander us, we'll pursue your legal responsibility. The young director's eyes flickered. After he entered, his words carried a bit of guilt. Hearing the heated discussions outside, how would he know who was right and who was wrong in this matter? Chapter 184. Seeing that the director's attitude wasn't firm enough, Qin Jishui persisted. Of course it's true. I still can't find my wife, so he must have hidden her at home. With this, the director's attitude became hesitant. His tough words earlier were only to save the hospital's face and trick this man. But now, the other party didn't take the bait at all, so it could be seen that he had confidence in himself. Moreover, everyone was saying that 3 men make a tiger. Even if it was fake, it would become real. Also, if Gan Song-bai was really innocent, why would others accuse him? The director's heart turned 1,000 times, already simulating the way to deal with this matter in his mind. What do you think about this? Let's close the door first and talk things out in private. The director smiled apologetically at Qin Jishui. With these words, Gan Song-bai's face also turned ugly. What was the meaning of closing the door? Even if this matter was settled, the hospital would be relieved, but what about him? Wouldn't no one believe his reputation? No. Say it in front of everyone. Dr. Gan's face turned green with anger. Luckily, he was a doctor and usually maintained his health. Otherwise, if he was angered by this Qin Jishui, he might have directly rolled his eyes. He wanted to see if there was any justice in this world. How could he make a mistake when he helped someone? That Seong-jin was tortured so miserably by this Qin Jishui, yet he still dared to run to the hospital and cause a ruckus. He didn't treat that unreasonable old thing, old Madam Chin, and was even said to have no medical ethics. If medical ethics meant not being able to differentiate between right and wrong, then what kind of illness could he treat? He might as well wash his hands in a new basin and quit. Gan Song-bai's anger reached its peak, and he was also a little depressed. How could he not know that there were very few so-called pure and kind patients in this world? It was just that when he treated patients, he mostly saw the patient's painful side. Why would he care about their moral character or what good or bad they've done in the past? It was his duty to help patients get rid of their pain. This wasn't wrong. Even if there were some patients who didn't know any better or were extremely vicious, he could still understand and treat them calmly. After all, there weren't many pure and kind people in this world, but at the same time, there weren't any pure and evil people. But this old lady was different. She had been to that neighborhood 4 or 5 times, and every time she went, the other party would look like they wanted to eat her alive. They spoke without thinking, but she tolerated it and continued to take his pulse and write his prescription. He did not expect the old lady to be grateful. After all, he had taken the consultation fee. But at the very least, the other party should have some respect. The old lady did not take the medicine he prescribed on time, or even did not use it at all. He asked her not to take spicy food or seafood, but the old lady did not listen, causing her to itch more and more. In the end, he tried his best to cure the old lady, but the old lady did not believe him at all. She made the decision to use the anti-itch ointment he bought from the market. How could they use the same medicine for different diseases? How could he continue to treat someone who knew such common sense? Rather than saying that he was taking his anger out on the old lady out of sympathy for Seong-jin, it would be better to say that the old lady had worn out his patience. Even a quack doctor would have a bit of a temper. He, Gan Song-bai, could be considered a famous doctor. How could he still smile and greet people at his beck and call? He wasn't a living bodhisattva. The old man was so angry that his mind was a bit muddled. He originally hoped that the director would clarify the matter, but he didn't expect that the moment he opened his mouth, he was already siding with the other party. His heart was half cold. He only hoped that that girl, Jing Yunjiao, would bring Seong-jin over and clarify the matter in front of everyone. The old man was unwilling to resolve the matter in private. The people outside were satisfied with their gossipy hearts. They also started to kick up a fuss. This is a major matter that involves a human life. You have to be open about it. Otherwise, who would dare to seek treatment from this old man in the future? Chapter 185. Gan Song-bai supported himself on the table, his old bones trembling. The director sighed, thinking that Gan Song-bai didn't know how to appreciate favors. This director's surname was Liu, the grandson of the hospital's director. The director was also someone who studied traditional Chinese medicine, but because Western medicine developed quickly, his children and grandchildren all dabbled in both. However, this director Liu was still young and only had some foundation in traditional Chinese medicine. Because of his family background, he had long become complacent and thought that he was amazing. Let's talk about it openly then. Director Liu nodded irritably. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at Qin Ji Shui, saying, "This big brother, I don't think you're an unreasonable person. How do you want to resolve this matter?" Qin Ji Shui was elated, but his expression didn't change as he replied, "Director, you're still the most reasonable one. I'm just seeking justice for myself. If your mother was left at home and starved to death, or if your wife ran away with an old man, you'd also be anxious." As he spoke, Director Liu's expression turned ugly. "Cough cough, I'm just giving an example. Director, please don't be angry." Qin Ji Shui smiled apologetically, then continued, "I don't have any requests. Just let him apologize to me in front of everyone, admit that his medical ethics are lacking, and guarantee that he won't treat other patients like this in the future. Also, return my wife to me, and this matter will be over. That's it." Director Liu was a little surprised. He thought that Qin Ji Shui was here to ask for money. However, he couldn't help but admit that this was the best solution. It was just an apology, it wasn't a big deal. Even a big hospital like theirs would have times when they made mistakes during operations. Usually, at this time, the patient's family would make a fuss, and the small hospital would step in to protect the patient. If the situation got out of hand, the doctor would come out to apologize or directly fire the doctor, and this matter would be resolved. No matter what, an apology was better than spending money. If this matter could be resolved with just a few words, why would there be a need for additional losses? Director Liu, what do you mean by that? That's it. Don't tell me you think his request isn't too much. Gan Song-bai couldn't believe that these words came out of Director Liu's mouth. He had a good relationship with the director of this hospital, but Director Liu was ambitious and didn't want to just open a small clinic. Moreover, his family had had some money, so he founded this hospital when he was young and slowly expanded it until it reached its current state. Later on, Dean Liu invited him over. What he was interested in was not the salary, but something else. He wanted to get in touch with more patients, and he also wanted to see what level the other doctors in the hospital were at. But he didn't expect that Dean Liu would raise such a grandson. Instead of asking for the truth, he asked for the other party's request right off the bat. From his tone, it was as if he felt that the other party was asking for too little. At this time, Director Liu was also a little impatient. He had never been optimistic about this kind of stubborn old man. He thought that he was a role model just because he had some medical skills, but in fact, he was just putting on an act. To put it nicely, national healers were profound and unfathomable. To put it bluntly, they were just bluffing. It wasn't as if he had never learned it before. Dr. Gan, they've already come looking for you. If you don't apologize, are you going to drag the hospital down with you? The other party didn't ask you to do anything. As long as you say something and lower your status, this matter will be settled. Besides, that's someone else's wife after all. You and someone else's wife. Slap. Before Director Liu could finish his words, Gan Song-bai gave him a tight slap across the face. Who do you think you are? Even your grandfather wouldn't talk to me like that. You want me to apologize? I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I apologize? Chapter 186. Gan Song-bai was truly enraged. He already knew that Qin Ji Shui wasn't a good person, so although he was angry, he couldn't disregard his body for this bastard. But this Director Liu was considered human, right? Moreover, he'd watched this brat grow up. Although they'd drifted apart after they grew up, his relationship with Director Liu wasn't bad. Since when was it his grandson's turn to point fingers? Qin Ji Shui made him so angry that he gnashed his teeth in hatred, but this Director Liu made him feel heartache. This was someone who studied medicine. When he was young, his grandfather and father had always taught him how to be a good person first, followed by medical skills. Director Liu's attitude was simply slandering his character. If he had to admit that he had no medical ethics to speak of, he might as well take his old life. Director Liu covered his face and glared at Gan Song-bai. Seeing him act like an elder, he didn't have much confidence, but more than that, he was angry. No matter what, he was still a director and would inherit this hospital in the future. Gan Song-bai slapped his face in front of so many people, that was throwing his face. How was he going to establish his prestige in the future? Dr. Gan, don't be unable to differentiate good from bad. This matter of yours has already seriously tarnished our hospital's reputation. We can ask for compensation from you, but seeing that you're old, we won't be so ruthless. Today, you'll find this person's wife, then properly apologize to him and me. Then, we'll consider this matter closed. Is this so difficult? Director Liu roared. Qin Ji Shui's mood improved a lot. He thought that this matter wouldn't be so easy to resolve after finding a leader. Who knew that this young director would be such a godly assistant and actually helped him quarrel with Gan Song-bai. Gan Song-bai was so angry that he couldn't speak. After all, he was already old. Even if he did take care of his health, he still couldn't stand being tormented like this. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and his head hurt even more. He pointed a trembling finger at Director Liu. Sweeping his gaze around, he saw Qin Ji Shui's lips curl into a cold smile. He couldn't hold on any longer and fell back onto the chair with a thump. In an instant, the surrounding people panicked and hurried forward to save him. Director Liu frowned, thinking that Gan Song-bai was acting with him. When he hit him just now, he used so much strength. How could he be this weak? He must have wanted to avoid responsibility, so he deliberately used a scheme. Unfortunately, Qin Ji Shui didn't give up. You really fainted at the right time. But no matter what, your hospital must give me an explanation today. When Director Liu heard this, he said angrily, Get out of the way, Dr. Gan. Everyone knows that your body has always been in good health. Stop pretending now. Even if you continue to pretend, this matter will still have to be resolved later. If you continue to make a fuss and refuse to apologize, I can only represent the hospital to fire you. However, even if you leave, you still have to resolve this mess. Otherwise, you will have to compensate. Chief Surgeon Liu spoke without stopping. The doctors who were familiar with Dr. Gan in the consultation room had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. Chief Surgeon Liu was President Liu's grandson. How could he be so unreasonable? How could the elderly in the hospital stay? If he really inherited the hospital in the future, they probably wouldn't have a place to stay. There was also Dr. Gan, who suffered such a disaster for no reason. When Jing Yunjiao and Xiong Jin rushed to the hospital, what they saw was this kind of scene. Gan Songbai collapsed on the chair, his face deathly pale. The people around him all had hesitant and worried expressions, some were extremely ill at ease, and some looked like they were watching a show. She simply couldn't imagine that Grandpa Gan would be bullied to this extent. Dr. Gan, you're still not listening to me, are you? If you continue like this, I won't leave you any face. Dr. Liu saw that Gan Songbai didn't move at all and continued stubbornly. Shut up. Jing Yunjiao directly rushed in. Chapter 187. Jing Yunjiao squeezed out of the crowd and kicked the annoying director to the side. In the next moment, she hurried to Gan Songbai's side. Feeling his pulse, it was rapid and his blood was overflowing. Hurriedly, she pulled down her backpack and reached inside. Jing Yunjiao took out a piece of ginseng from her space and stuffed it into the old man's mouth. Following that, she pressed a few acupoints on the old man's body. The spirit jade didn't mention acupuncture yet, otherwise, it would definitely have a miraculous effect. At this moment, Jing Yunjiao's actions were strange, but the doctors in the room saw through it. They had also seen Jing Yunjiao before. Dr. Gan had said that this was his adopted granddaughter and that she was a medical genius. However, at that time, they more or less despised her. After all, she was just a little girl. How many years could she learn medicine? What kind of genius was she? But now that they saw it, they were shocked. Although this Jing Yunjiao's methods were a bit inexperienced, her technique was extremely good. Not to mention the accuracy of the acupoints, after being pressed by her, Old Man Gan's complexion improved a lot. His breathing became more even, and his eyelids moved, as if he was about to wake up. However, although they recognized those acupoints, they didn't know this kind of method to save people. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, some people with decent medical skills understood a bit and couldn't help but admire her in their hearts. On the other hand, Director Liu, who had been kicked aside by Jing Yunjiao, crawled up in a sorry state. He pointed at Jing Yunjiao and angrily said, "Whose daughter is this? Does she have any upbringing?" Qin Ji Shui had seen Jing Yunjiao before and hurriedly said, "Director Liu, I know her. She's this old man's granddaughter. She's a little indecent girl who helped her grandfather kidnap my wife." When Jing Yunjiao received the old man's call, she already knew that something big had happened. Without a second word, she asked Xiong Jin to accompany her over. They also didn't think that this man would be so shameless as to find trouble with the old man. At this moment, Xiong Jin restrained herself. Jing Yunjiao was still treating Gan Songbai, so now wasn't the time to quarrel. It was better for her to look for an opportunity to stand out. Qin Ji Shui kept staring at this pair of old and young, so he didn't notice Xiong Jin standing in the crowd. Jing Yunjiao ignored the two of them. His cold appearance made people unable to get close to him. A few minutes later, the old man slowly woke up and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. His turbid eyes were bloodshot and his hands were trembling. "Girl, you're here." The old man was starting to regret his decision. He shouldn't have allowed Jing Yunjiao to bring Xiong Jin over to clarify the matter. This person was worse than a beast. Jing Yunjiao was just a little girl, and Xiong Jin was just a married woman. How could they deal with this kind of scoundrel? "Grandpa, you should rest first. I'll handle this matter. Trust me." Jing Yunjiao's voice was low and cold. After speaking, he turned to look at Director Liu and Qin Ji Shui. A trace of killing intent flashed through his eyes. Two grown men bullying an old man. You guys really have the heart to do this. I thought you guys were just heartless, but now it seems that you guys don't even have any sense of shame. Qin Ji Shui, you've been living like a dog for the past few decades. Stealing your wife's family's property and threatening your wife for so many years isn't enough. Now you even extend your hand to the hospital. What makes me laugh even more is that there are actually people who dare to believe this kind of nonsense that inverts black and white and is full of loopholes. I've really witnessed a drama where right and wrong can't be distinguished, where good and evil can't be distinguished. I really admire the cold hearts of everyone here. To think that there's even my grandfather's patient among you guys. You can even look at your savior with cold eyes. It's impossible for a junior like me to not feel disgusted. Chapter 188. At this moment, Jing Yunjiao was extremely disgusted with this group of people in front of him. If these people were completely unrelated, it would have been fine. After all, everyone had a gossipy heart. It wasn't wrong for them to not be able to differentiate between right and wrong. But Grandpa Gan had worked in this hospital for decades. Could it be that not a single person understood him? Among them were his former patients or current patients. There were also colleagues who had received his guidance, yet they couldn't lend a helping hand at the crucial moment. Although there were indeed people who were hesitant to save him, they ultimately didn't. It wasn't as if they didn't know that older people's endurance would decrease in all aspects. Every second of delay meant more danger. How could they not understand? They were only thinking about their own interests and were afraid of being dragged down. Jing Yunjiao's words made a few people who were familiar with Dr. Gan's face turn red. They also felt a little guilty. Director Liu was both angry and annoyed. You're Dr. Gan's granddaughter? You're so sharp-tongued, saying that we can't differentiate between right and wrong? It's clearly your grandfather who kidnapped someone else's wife. Oh right, the person who came to complain just now also said that you were involved, right? Little girl, what you're doing isn't good for your family. I heard Qin Ji Shui call you Director Liu, right? Jing Yunjiao's expression was cold as he asked. Director Liu paused, then snorted in acknowledgement. Someone with a stomach full of idiots like you can become a director? Nepotism? Did you sleep with the director or the director's wife? Jing Yunjiao didn't show any mercy. Randomly spouting nonsense. Not Qin Ji Shui. What nonsense are you spouting? You have no respect for your elders and lack of upbringing. Don't think that I won't dare to hit you just because you're a child. Let me tell you, my grandfather is the director of this hospital, and the director's wife is my grandmother, Director Liu said angrily. The other party was obviously a little girl who hadn't reached adulthood yet. He definitely couldn't use force. Moreover, he previously thought that Gan Songbai was faking it, but looking at him now, it was obvious that he was really angered. If something happened to his old bones, he'd have to compensate them later. It wasn't worth it. So that's how it is. Then no wonder an idiot can climb to this stage. Jing Yunjiao paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and continued, as a director, you're in charge of a lot of things. You're also the grandson of the director, so I'm sure you usually participate in the purchase of medical consumables and ingredients in the hospital, right? You're such a biased and self-righteous person. It's easy for your subordinates to deceive you. Who knows, maybe there's something wrong with the things used in the hospital now. For example, the gauze is full of bacteria, and the medicine is shoddy. Don't you think so? Director Liu's face turned green. That's slander. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can break the law. I'll hold you accountable on behalf of our hospital. Really? Then what were you doing just now? Qin Ji Shui spread rumors to tarnish my grandfather's reputation. At the very least, you can be considered an accomplice. Besides, what did I say? It's just a guess, Jing Yunjiao said in disgust. Director Liu was so angry that his face turned ugly. He did not expect the little girl to react so quickly. He knew in his heart that he couldn't continue using the hospital as an excuse. After thinking for a bit, he leaned to the side and said, as the director, I have the responsibility to deal with the parasites in the hospital. Your grandfather kidnapped someone else's wife, And now the other party's husband has come knocking on our door. How can it be fake? Immediately, everyone's gaze turned to Qin Ji Shui. Little girl, I beg you, please return my wife to me. I really love her. I can't live without her. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have argued with her before. I promise I'll properly apologize to her when I see her, okay? Qin Ji Shui immediately acted innocent. Chapter 189. Jing Yunjiao sneered and walked towards Qin Ji Shui, one step at a time. Her figure was thin, but every step she took gave off an invisible pressure. Her eyes were as firm as steel, but also carried a silent darkness, as if she wanted to obliterate the person in front of her. Her gaze pierced straight to the bottom of one's heart, causing one to panic and have goosebumps all over their body. Do animals have the right to talk about love? Jing Yunjiao said coldly. Qin Ji Shui, you and Xiong Jin got married when you were 23. Within 2 years after your marriage, your work wasn't going well. Xiong Jin inherited the family business and became the company's CEO, while you drank yourself to vent your male chauvinism when her father was on his deathbed. Because of this, Xiong Jin brought you into the company and gave you an official position, but you weren't satisfied. When Xiong Jin was pregnant, you conspired with your grandmother to scheme against her, making her sign all kinds of documents, while you emptied the company and replaced her. Not only did you get the company, you made your mother bring your first wife back to live in Hua Ning County, while you did whatever you wanted in Ning Group. Outsiders all thought you were a good man, but in reality, you're just a scumbag who relies on a woman and refuses to admit it. You used Xiong Jin's mother's illness to threaten her, making her stay at home to serve your grandmother. A rich family's eldest daughter, a company's CEO with high qualifications, was tormented by you until she looked haggard, neither human nor ghost. You finally escaped from the demon's den with great difficulty, yet you still have the cheek to say you love her. Qin Ji Shui didn't expect Jing Yunjiao to find out so much about this matter, and was momentarily speechless. At this moment, Xiong Jin stood up. Everyone, I'm the wife Qin Ji Shui was talking about. Xiong Jin's expression was complicated as she spoke first. Xiong Jin, Jin, I finally found you. Qin Ji Shui was stunned, but in the next second, he immediately pounced over. Xiong Jin didn't hesitate, raising her hand to slap him. Scum. You think I don't know why you're looking for me? Let me tell you, I'll never help you plead with Elder Tang. You've harmed me for so many years, yet you still want to use my connections to help you save the company. Impossible. Xiong Jin's words stated the truth. With Jing Yunjiao laying the groundwork and Xiong Jin's swift counterattack, the onlookers were already starting to get angry. Originally, this matter was a bit strange. The old man was old and looked amiable. How could he be someone who would mess around with relationships? Originally, everyone was just there to join in the fun. They were skeptical, but now that another version had been revealed, it really stimulated their hearts. Could it be that the person they were indulging just now was a beast in human form? Seeing this well-dressed man calling her his wife, everyone thought that he had suffered a great grievance, but it turned out that he was such a person. Not only did he make use of his wife to achieve success, he even turned his back on her after the deed was done. He even let his wife stay with her evil mother-in-law and be tortured all day long. Now, the reason why he was in such a hurry to find her was to make use of her. Jin, you've been brainwashed by this old man. What nonsense did he say to you? I'm your husband. Qin Ji Shui glared at her. Aren't they already in the process of divorce? Qin Ji Shui, you really know how to act. It's a pity I didn't realize it back then. Otherwise, even if I didn't marry for the rest of my life, I wouldn't have found a beast like you. Xiong Jin said fiercely, then continued, it's no use even if you waste your energy begging me now. That company has been run by you for so many years, it's already dirty. Now that there's a problem, you deserve it. Oh right, before I came here, I received a call. Right now, someone should have already gone to your villa in Ning City to collect the debt. It's so noisy. Old madam is alone inside, I really don't know how she's doing. Chapter 190. Although Qin Ji Shui's company wasn't small, to the Tang family, It was like a sesame seed and a watermelon. In front of the Tang family, his little business didn't even have the ability to sustain itself. Today's time was enough for a lot of things to happen in Ning City. When Qin Ji Shui heard Xiong Jin mention the old lady, that bit of calmness was somewhat shattered. His eyeballs were about to pop out, as if he wanted to swallow Xiong Jin alive. But he had to endure. It wasn't time to despair yet. "Ah Jin, my mother's health isn't good and she's nostalgic, so I let you accompany her and take care of her for a period of time. But I didn't expect you to harbor so much resentment because of this. I know you're angry, but I'll let you be, okay? As long as you forgive me." Qin Ji Shui's character didn't change as he continued. "It's too late. Before saying all this, I advise you to make a call and ask about your company's current situation." Jing Yunjiao reminded coldly from the side. When he said this, Qin Ji Shui's entire face stiffened. Taking out his phone, there were actually dozens of missed calls. It was probably because it was too noisy earlier that he didn't hear them. As soon as he replied, it was as if he was struck by lightning. Gone, everything was gone: forced bankruptcy, all the company's assets, and his 2 villas in Ning family, were all sealed up. Sealed up? Hearing this, Qin Ji Shui's entire body shook violently. The old lady was still inside, which meant that she was also chased out. Being chased out while facing the accusations of those creditors? Thinking of this, Qin Ji Shui was completely stupefied. He didn't expect everything to happen so quickly. But that was the Tang family. From start to end, the Tang family only expressed one intention, and there were people who took the initiative to clean him up for them. There was no turning back at all. The moment the Tang family thought of this, he was already consigned to eternal damnation. What was laughable was that he was still in Hua Ning County, thinking that everything would be fine as long as he got Xiong Jin back. Venomous woman. Qin Ji Shui roared fiercely and raised his leg to kick Xiong Jin. However, in the next instant, Xiong Jin was pulled over by Jing Yunjiao. He could only see Jing Yunjiao's figure flashing, moving around the small consultation room with ease. Qin Ji Shui's hand brushed past the back of Qin Ji Shui's hand, and with a catcher sound, a heart-wrenching sound was heard. Qin Ji Shui's elbow then fiercely pressed against the back of Qin Ji Shui's waist and kicked his leg. In the next second, Qin Ji Shui fell to his knees with a thump. That movement was painful to watch. Jing Yunjiao's methods were amazing, but his speed was so fast that it felt like an illusion. Qin Ji Shui knelt on the ground, feeling that his lower back was extremely heavy. He couldn't move at all, and the direction in which he was kneeling was facing Xiong Jin, making him feel even more humiliated. "Vicious woman, why did I marry you? Isn't it just a lousy company that made you hold a grudge until now? You're a woman, what qualifications do you have to be better than a man in every aspect? It's for your own good that I let you stay at home to take care of my husband and children." Qin Ji Shui was already somewhat deranged. Thinking about how he'd lost everything at this moment, that feeling of being thrown down from the clouds made him wish he was dead. "Why did you marry me? Do you need me to remind you? Back then, your family background wasn't good. When you were in school, you didn't even have any living expenses, yet you spent all the money you had on you to buy me a bouquet of flowers. I felt guilty and returned the money to you, yet you said that I was insulting your dignity. However, everyone knew that you spent the money on me, so I had no other choice but to treat you to a month's worth of meals," Xiong Jin said coldly. Speaking of the past, Xiong Jin suddenly felt that she was really too naive in the past. Perhaps Qin Ji Shui's ambition had never been small. Chapter 191. Back then, Xiong Jin's grades were good and her looks weren't bad either. There were countless boys who chased after her, but she never had such thoughts. One time, she met Qin Ji Shui by chance. At that time, she was with a few classmates, while Qin Ji Shui was on the other side eating bread, drinking cold water and reading a book. Her friends said that he looked good, but it was a pity that his family background was too poor. She ridiculed him and felt bad about it, so she spoke up for him. After that, it was Qin Ji Shui's pursuit. At that time, if she knew that speaking up for him would bring about such consequences, she'd rather be the bad guy. Compared to other boys, what Qin Ji Shui gave her was pitifully little. a bouquet of flowers, and it was such a big deal that everyone knew about it. If she returned the favor, it would seem like she was committing a heinous crime. Moreover, at that time, Qin Ji Shui's looks weren't bad and his attitude was gentle. She patiently treated him to meals for a month. Now that she thought about it, the food she ate for a month wasn't even on the same level as Qin Ji Shui's. Qin Ji Shui's calculations were really deep. A month later, Qin Ji Shui started to look like he was working hard. He had dark circles under his eyes every day and would fall asleep while walking. There were a few times when he fell down and was battered and exhausted. Everyone thought that he was like this because he was dumped by her and heartbroken. She went to his door to question him, but Qin Ji Shui told her that he would work hard to study and give her the best life in the future. When they were young, girls of the same age would think that a man who gave his everything to you was deeply in love. She was no different. Only then did she slowly sink into this kind of love. From then on, she paid for Qin Ji Shui's school fees, living expenses, and bought all his clothes and books for him. During festivals, she would even let him bring all kinds of gifts back to his hometown. Thinking back, other than Qin Ji Shui's symbolic rejection at the start, he never mentioned it again. Instead, it was as if it was a matter of course. Once she showed that she cared about money, Qin Ji Shui's attitude changed to one that hurt his pride and wanted to work hard. That look clearly showed that he had her in his grasp. Seong Jin only felt her whole body turn cold. Especially when she thought about the past that she thought was beautiful, she felt that she was hopelessly stupid. When a man who couldn't even feed himself talked about love, could it be true love? At this moment, Seong Jin's attitude towards Qin Ji Shui became colder and colder. However, it was different from her previous hatred. Now, there was only disgust and loathing left. Qin Ji Shui's face was filled with anger as he kept calling her a poisonous woman. His mouth didn't stop. Back then, there were so many people better than you everywhere. Why did I choose you? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have married you even if you begged me on your knees. Seong Jin, don't think that I don't know. You've always looked down on me. You think I'm not good enough for you, so you use your superiority to suppress me. Seong Jin shook her head. There was nothing more to say. From today onwards, what awaited Qin Ji Shui would be days of complete darkness. The onlookers couldn't help but shake their heads. Many of them had poor family backgrounds, but they didn't want their sons to become such a person. If a person didn't even have a conscience and humanity, what was the use of earning so much money? At this moment, Qin Ji Shui had completely confessed. Director Liu's expression was as if he had eaten a dead fly. Some of the other doctors also looked at him with ridicule and amusement. So it's a misunderstanding. Since it's a misunderstanding, let's just clear it up. Everyone, let's disperse. Security, throw this man out. Dr. Liu waved his hand and said. The moment he said that, the security was obedient and dragged Qin Ji Shui out. However, the others weren't willing to do so. Especially Jing Yunjiao, who reached out and blocked Director Liu's path. Chapter 192. Qin Ji Shui wasn't a good person, and this Director Liu wasn't any better either. Director Liu, do you think this matter will be settled with just one sentence from you? Jing Yunjiao said faintly, his ice-cold voice making one's scalp tingle. Director Liu also felt a headache coming on. Actually, he should be protecting Dr. Gan, but he just didn't like this old fellow Gan Songbai. Every time he returned home, his grandfather would always tell him that his medical skills weren't good, and that he must learn from Dr. Gan seriously. This Dr. Gan was a stubborn old man. He was smelly and stubborn, and thought that he was amazing. Who was he trying to scare by pretending to be unfathomable every day? Thus, he wanted to take this opportunity to teach this old man a lesson. Of course, if he could chase him out, that would be the best. What else do you want? Isn't the misunderstanding already resolved? Director Liu said stubbornly. Director Liu wasn't even 30 years old. He wore glasses, but he looked a little impetuous. His gaze was drifting, and his tone was casual. The white coat he wore wasn't very neat, and he looked a little unreliable. Director Liu is young and promising, but I remember that there are requirements to be a chief physician, right? Jing Yunjiao asked without rhyme or reason. There were several hospitals in the county. Although the outside called it a county hospital, it was actually a private one. Its development was a little better than the public one, and it could be considered a marvel. Although the area was large, its scale couldn't be compared to those big cities. But no matter what, it was reasonable to follow certain rules. Not everyone could be a chief physician. At the very least, they had to be a deputy chief physician for 5 years, and there was also a time limit to being a deputy chief physician. 2 years for a doctorate, 4 years for a master's degree, and this time limit was still based on the requirements of being an attending physician. That's why it was difficult for an average person to climb to this level without 10 or 20 years of work. But because this person in front of him was the grandson of the director, all the complicated procedures were exempted. However, the average person didn't understand these, especially in this small county. As long as one's medical skills were up to standard, it was normal to turn a blind eye sometimes. Moreover, this hospital's chairman and director were the same person. Outsiders couldn't make the decision, and Director Liu would definitely inherit this position in the future. When Director Liu heard Jing Yunjiao mention this matter, his expression started to stiffen. He thought for a bit and said, "What do you want to say now?" "Little girl, there are exceptions to everything. I've learned medicine from my grandfather since I was young. My standard is unquestionable." "Really? Then, can Director Liu compete with me?" Jing Yunjiao asked casually. Director Liu was stunned when he heard that. He sneered, "Say that again." "It seems that Director Liu's ears are not very good." Jing Yunjiao said proudly, "You've been studying medicine since you were young." "Coincidentally, so have I. It's just a pity that I haven't gotten my medical license yet, but I think I'm still better than you." Everyone had seen how Jing Yunjiao had helped Gansong by earlier, so they knew she had some skills. However, she was still young and didn't even have a certificate. That didn't sound convincing at all. "You said it yourself that you don't even have a certificate. What are you going to use to compete with me?" "What a joke. Little girl, I advise you to study hard. After a few years, when you return to Huaning County, you might have to beg me to give you a job." Director Liu said disdainfully. "That means you don't dare. Even someone like me who hasn't finished my apprenticeship is afraid. It can be seen that you don't have much skill. It seems that people who seek you for treatment must be more careful in the future. Don't risk your life. Moreover, you're the dignified grandson of the director. I believe that even if you want someone's life, there will still be someone to take care of it for you. The patient's death will be in vain." Jing Yunjiao said sarcastically, trying to provoke him. Director Liu could choose not to respond, but his image had already plummeted because of the incident just now. As long as he stepped out of here, it was guaranteed that he wouldn't be able to gain the respect and trust of this hospital's patients for a long time. His sensitive identity would also directly affect this hospital. Chapter 193. Jing Yunjiao's provocation stunned the crowd. They couldn't believe that a little girl who looked underage would dare to be so arrogant. Even if Director Liu's medical skills were not as good as Gansong Bai's, he was still a professional. Director Liu's pupils constricted under his glasses. His face was serious and unhappy. He knew that this little girl was deliberately provoking him, but if he didn't respond, he would lose face. He gritted his teeth and said, "How do you want to compete? Little girl, no patient here will be your guinea pig. Don't even think about it. Who said that the competition must be about treatment? Director Liu, since you're going to be in charge of this hospital in the future, why don't we compete in something simple and practical? For example, medicinal herbs, diagnosis, Chinese medicine prescriptions, anything is fine," Jing Yunjiao said directly. Ever since she started studying medicine, she had always kept a low profile. She always felt that she had only absorbed a few pieces of spirit jade and her ability was not enough. No matter what kind of illness she faced, she had to be careful. But in fact, the more she came into contact with this industry, the more she understood her ability compared to others. Her ancestor had lived for hundreds of years. The spirit jade was the knowledge in his brain, and the ancestor's knowledge was all-encompassing. So even if she had only absorbed 8 pieces, it was still comparable to other doctors. Director Liu sneered. She was really just a little girl. He estimated that she only knew the basics. Okay, then we'll do as you say. Today, a powerful person came to deliver medicinal herbs. He knows all kinds of medicinal herbs very well. Let him be the referee. As for Dr. Chen and the others, you can continue to work. Dr. Gan can come and watch the competition, Director Liu snorted and said confidently. She was just a little girl. How many medicinal herbs could she know? This was not something that could be done by reciting the names of medicinal herbs. After Director Liu finished speaking, he had already called someone to inform them to get ready. Half an hour later, Old Man Gan's body was much better. There was basically no problem. He walked to the competition venue with Jing Yunjiao. Director Liu arranged the competition in a large conference room. There was a glass window on one side of the wall, so the people outside could clearly see the situation inside. Chief Surgeon Liu even invited a retired doctor over to take charge of the operation. It looked very formal. Don't you think Director Liu is too calculative? Isn't it just a competition with a little girl? He's actually making such a big fuss. If that girl loses, she'll definitely be ridiculed by him. Dr. Gan won't have any face either. Someone outside said angrily. Shush, the person next to him hurriedly reminded him and said, Director Liu's plan is not just to provoke the old man and the young girl, but also to wait for the little girl to be unable to answer the question so that Dr. Gan can replace her. He wants to use Dr. Gan as a stepping stone to correct his reputation. However, when this person said that, the others felt that it was ridiculous. Dr. Gan was very capable. How could Director Liu compare to Dr. Gan? If he really had such an idea, then his IQ would really be worrying. However, these outsiders did not know that they had completely guessed Director Liu's thoughts. Director Liu had been in the position of director for a long time, so he was very confident in his own strength. Dr. Gan had been in the hospital for several decades, so he was no different from other doctors. He naturally felt that Gan Songbai was just an empty name. At this time, in the big conference room, there were some older men and women. Jing Yunjiao's young appearance was particularly eye-catching. After waiting for a while, the powerful referee that Director Liu had invited finally walked in. Chapter 194. The crowd outside immediately opened up a path for the powerful figure. Jing Yunjiao turned her head and looked over. Her face flashed with surprise. The person who came wasn't a stranger. It was that strange old man, Uncle Shu. Behind him was his disciple, Uncle Xing Yuan. When the two of them appeared, it was obvious that all the doctors in the room had very serious expressions, with a bit of respect. Director Liu quickly went up, his face carrying some flattery and politeness. Elder Shu, you actually came in person? Thank you so much. Director Liu was shocked and happy at the same time. This Uncle Shu was very mysterious. It was said that he wasn't a local and suddenly appeared in Huaning County. He was very low-key, but after he came, many big shots in the medical world specially came. It was said that his influence was very great. Moreover, his ability to make medicine was absolutely unmatched. Several hospitals in the county wanted to buy his processed herbs. His grandfather had told him long ago that he absolutely couldn't offend this Uncle Shu. Otherwise, he would inevitably get into trouble. He had always remembered. So every time this old man and his disciple came, he would specially take time to accompany them. But unfortunately, this old man had a strange temper. He was very cold to him and was very serious. And just now, he only wanted to invite this old man's disciple to come over. Who would have thought that Uncle Shu would come together? It was really a surprise. At this time, Old Man Shu didn't seem to hear Director Liu's greetings. He directly walked over and glanced at Jing Yunjiao, saying, "You can really make a fuss." Jing Yunjiao helplessly said, "Uncle Shu, Uncle Xing Yuan, why are you here?" When these words were said, Director Liu's face suddenly stiffened. This stinky girl actually knew this surnamed Shu? I heard that a blind girl provoked Director Liu. This old man thought of you, so I came to take a look. Sure enough, it's true. Uncle Shu replied without the slightest trace of politeness. Director Liu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When he called Shu Xingyuan, he mentioned this Jing Yunjiao. He said that she was a blind and self-righteous girl. Looking at this old man Shu's meaning, he heard it at that time? Then, with his current attitude, was he here to join in the fun or to seek justice for Jing Yunjiao? Jing Yunjiao had long been used to Uncle Shu's tone. The old man had a bad temper, but he was really good to her. Gan Songbai treated her like a family member, and this old man Shu was like a respected teacher. When she was absorbing the spirit jade, she would occasionally encounter some things that she didn't understand. Every time she opened her mouth to ask, she would definitely get an answer from old man Shu. Of course, he would also scold her as an idiot. She had always admired this old man because he was like a walking encyclopedia. As long as it was related to medicinal herbs, he would know everything clearly. He had a comprehensive understanding of all the methods to concoct medicinal herbs. His ability was outstanding. Not only that, Jing Yunjiao also felt that he had done some research on medical skills. At the very least, his level wouldn't be worse than Gan Songbai's. It was just that he didn't focus on medical skills. At this moment, old man Shu's expression was still solemn. He didn't look as amiable as the other old men, but he had the aura of someone who didn't understand the crowd. Isn't there a competition? Xingyuan, get someone to bring up the things I've prepared, old man Shu said coldly. At this moment, the room was silent. Not long after, all kinds of medicinal herbs were placed in front of him, but they were all wrapped in oil paper. Gan Songbai, who was sitting to the side and watching the competition, suddenly frowned. He had a very strange feeling. Yun Jiao, this girl's serious appearance was somewhat similar to Grandmaster Shu's. They had the same aura and the same demeanor, but they were both cold and strange. If this Grandmaster Shu was a local, he would even suspect that this Jing Yunjiao was his grandson. Chapter 195. Gan Songbai also had some respect for this old man Shu. He even inquired about this Master Shu who was the same age as him. However, his ability was limited. He only knew that this person was called Shu Jingji. He was famous for his eccentric temperament and lived in a remote alley in the county. This person did not lack money, but he chose to live in an inconvenient place. It was clear that he did not like crowds. This Shu Jingji was a pharmaceutical master, or more accurately, a pharmaceutical madman. Besides his disciple, Shu Xingyuan, there was no one else. Elder Shu, do you want us to identify the herbs? Gan Songbai was sizing up Shu Jingji when Director Liu rushed up and asked with a smile. Old man Shu frowned. Identify the herbs by smell. Begin. Ah! Director Liu was stunned. What did he mean? Identifying by the smell of the fragrance? That was not necessary, Director Liu. It seems that you don't have much confidence. Since that is the case, I won't be polite. Jing Yunjiao did not think much of it. She took a pen and paper and approached the oiled paper bags to smell them one by one. Some of the herb's smell was very obvious and strong. Generally, experienced doctors could smell it. However, at the same time, there were many herbs that did not have any smell. It was difficult to identify them. However, for Jing Yunjiao, this test did not make it difficult for her. Since young, her sense of smell was more sensitive. Since she had the space and absorbed the spirit jade, many subtle smells could not hide in front of her. Seeing that Jing Yunjiao's speed was extremely fast, Director Liu couldn't just be surprised anymore and hurriedly followed after her. Just this smell made him feel a little confused. Halfway through, he could only smell 3 herbs, agarwood, peppermint, and tangerine peel. As for the rest, he could roughly identify some of them, but there was still some that he did not have a clue about. Jing Yunjiao's speed was so fast that he even suspected that this girl was writing nonsense. 30 herbs, each one was only given 15 seconds. Therefore, after 10 minutes, the first round was over. Director Liu still had not recovered from his shock. He had a bad premonition. In his imagination, this was not the way to compare herbs. Not with the nose, but with the eyes. If he relied on his eyes, he could guarantee that he would be able to recognize all of these herbs. Little Liu, 15. Xu Jingji didn't even raise his head. He glanced at his answer scroll and said directly. His answer was a mess. It was obvious that he wasn't sure at all. However, he had some foundation after all. He guessed half of it correctly. Director Liu heaved a sigh of relief. Although the results were a little bad, it was better than he had expected. Jing Yunjiao, all correct. Not bad. While Director Liu was guessing Jing Yunjiao's results, Xu Jingji nodded in satisfaction and said, "You've done well." Impossible. Director Liu hurriedly rushed forward and snatched Jing Yunjiao's answer. When he saw it, he was dumbfounded. The handwriting on the white paper was neat and tidy. 30 types of medicinal herbs were listed perfectly. Looking at the medicinal herbs, Director Liu thought for a moment and knew that Jing Yunjiao was right. But how did this Jing Yunjiao have this kind of ability? Are you done? If you're done, let's move on to the next round. Xu Jingji did not care about Director Liu's thoughts. He glanced at him and said a sentence. After that, he directly asked Xing Yuan to remove the medicinal herbs. Then, he spread out dozens of small paper bags. Here are 10 types of medicinal herbs: Gastrodia elata, Chinese yam, Panax noto ginseng, Morinda officinalis, Chuan fritillary, black medicine, safflower, Eucommia ulmoides, deer antler, and ginseng. However, there are fakes in each of these herbs. You only need to pick out 10 authentic ones. Uncle Xing Yuan added after arranging the things. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.